Venezuela, Greenland, the Federal Reserve. It has felt like a week where decades have happened, to appropriate what Lenin is said to have said. Never mind how much has changed in the past year. When I gave this talk a year ago, it was 2 weeks before Donald Trump became president for the second time. It was also 1 week before China released DeepSeek, showing that it was the equal of the US in artificial intelligence. Most attention has gone on the first, inevitably. We've had from President Trump what amounts to a revolution. He's given the US a radically new role in the world, and at the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, a role that rejects the principles on which the US was founded, that government should be accountable to the people. He has dismissed international law and the interests of old allies. It is not grandiose to call this the end of the Western alliance.
Oh my goodness. Shots fired, ladies and gentlemen. How are you guys out there doing, my fellow world patriots? It is indeed, have to check the date, of course, Friday, January 16th, 2026, and we get that part right too as well. Of course, I brought you my brother, Mr. 107, who I'm going to pull in just 1 second here, and I definitely want to get his comments on this as well, but we're going to give you also a little Tina Peters update. We touched on it yesterday on the Table of Titans, and it looks, from an outsider's perspective anyways, it looks good, but we'll get Mr. Juan's perspective on that. But I just thought it was interesting that this woman here, and I did get this from the two ladies over there at Promethean Action, because they're actually following this stuff pretty good, and they keyed in on the part where they're talking about this and that, but I want to ask Juan about this part right here again.
Decades have happened, to appropriate what Lenin is said to have said.
Right here.
The Federal Reserve.
Well, first off, what's going on, Juan? Thanks for joining me today. Before we even do that, let's say hello. How you doing today, brother?
Doing great. By the way, just for everybody here, a total shout out for the girls over at Promethean. Everybody here should actually be subscribing to that, in my opinion, and they do compact presentations. But as I've been saying for decades and decades, the real fight here is with that city within the city of Rome, there in London. It's the ancient city of Rome. It's the inner wall, the square mile where all the banking capital of the world is. All those families. Remember, that's where the dossier came from. That was the first round against Trump. These guys went over and got it there at the city of London. Stroke and Page and, McCain's people and all that. And it kind of didn't hit for people previously when I would talk about, we're really in a fight, second civil or revolutionary war, because England hasn't let its grip loose and people just don't see it. But that's the real fight that we're in, that Trump's in like that at some, more base level. It's a globalist agenda, the Davos crowd, World Economic Forum, all these things that have somehow gotten their tentacles into the American body politic. And you don't recognize it, so invasive of every aspect of our life here in America that you almost don't see it because it's just so, pervasive at every level. But that's what we're fighting and extracting out of our country and pushing out and rebelling against, including what really amounts to this new world order. And so saying we're not going to be part of it. And when you hear these people comment, it's like we're somehow doing the bad thing unconstitutional, that we're not giving our sovereignty over to a globalist, unelected group of monsters to manage us for the rest of eternity. This is that moment. We don't throw it off now. It's for people that remember Star Trek. This is I forget what they call it now. All of a sudden, I just had it a second ago. Once you get locked in this, you'll never get free of it. Once they finish this enclosure they're putting us in. So we have this moment to throw it off before they can seal the deal. We'd never get free, and without some kind of global war, destroy everything. So anyway, I just, when you mentioned the gals who were Promethean, I wanted to give them an immediate shout out. Everybody should be paying attention to that. They're so good at articulating the details and putting it in perspective. And there's virtually nobody else out there that I'm aware of that monitors as closely and then articulates as concisely and understandably these conflicts that we're in with that group that are really globalists at the core of this fight. And if you understand what they're saying, it helps to put a lot of the things going on in the country and Trump like that into perspective. You don't hear things like trigger words like, Federal Reserve. Okay, well, excuse me, the Federal Reserve is not constitutional. And it was put in, middle of the night, just like Obamacare, on extra session or something. Nobody else was really paying attention. And that's the biggest part of the fight. Honest elections and honest money. And the honest money part goes straight to that City of London crowd and the Federal Reserve and all that. So when she raises that, yeah, it's a pretty big deal.
Huge. And I like them too is because during all this stuff, whenever I do the Q stuff or whatever, I always look for people that are outside of that, right, and see if they're also seeing the same thing that we are wanting to happen and what we are seeing as well. And I do, right? So I see that she's talking about the kind of breaking apart from our original enemies here, and that was just amazing too. And you had brought this up during, so I pulled this up. It's like they're doxing themselves as we speak here. Well, let me play. It's only 13 seconds here. You're going to love this one.
I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
I mean, when there is a new world order, and there will be, when we are successful, and we will be, there's a real chance for a new world order. And it's like, whoa! I thought they got the talking memos on that stuff, like a couple decades ago.
Well, and by the way, that's out of England again. That is with the.
This is Canada. I mean, it's just they're all outing themselves. It's just so crazy to me.
Yeah, I should say the. Commonwealth. So within those Commonwealth countries. So yeah, it's a big deal. So anyway,
I'm loving it, and I don't know how much you are much more well informed than me on this, and this is a clip that we played yesterday on the Table of Titans. About 3 minutes, but I think it's worth listening to, and then maybe anything you can add to it or take away, because from what I'm listening to, it looks to me like the judges on this panel have basically had it with their little argument of.
Well, okay. Before you play that, I just had my morning coalition call.
Sure.
With we have a pretty weighty group of people that we do our Friday calls, and so it's very important. So Tina's a main topic. One of the key things that is not understood well. John Case, he's one of Tina's attorneys, he's a Colorado attorney. Peter Tickton is the lead counsel for all of her attorneys, and that was something that Trennis Evans and I were able to put together, last spring. So John Case is the local Colorado attorney and had to present what he did at this hearing that you're about to watch. Matters of her case have been appealed, and the appeals court is a 3-judge panel, and they're reviewing what happened on the case where the trial judge had sentenced Tina, and his comments in the sentencing, what he allowed the jury to hear, how he conducted the trial is all on trial now with this 3-judge appeals court. And so there's been huge criticism, even within people that are close to me with what's going on here. And of course, Tina's a very close friend, and there's all sorts of things here that I could say, but I'll just pass through them. they were critical of John Case because he wasn't more aggressive, assertive, and there's things he should have had included here that he didn't, and he wasn't getting good counsel on stuff, and it's actually frustrating. We just had conversations that Mark Cook has huge information. In fact, you got to have Mark on. Let's set it up. Let's get you on with Mark Cook. He's does the election integrity stuff
Sure.
and count paper ballot roadshow. He will be so helpful, and he's so intricate to knowing the backstory in the Tina Peters case. You will not get a better, more detailed account of all things on the vote and specifically Tina Peters' case than you'd get with Mark Cook. Let's get him on with you. But
Sure.
The criticisms of Case, attorney Case, in the way he presented what he presented to the court, I had a number of people say that he was too low key, too understated, wasn't aggressive enough. And I get that. And I deal with attorneys all the time, have for decades, get in their minds and the strategies in all kinds of situations. What Case's strategy is, in the way he presented what he did to the court, was to try to make as strong of arguments as he could within what was presented in the brief. And then not be so aggressive with the court that he's telling the court, you got to do this and you're not doing that right. And this other thing. He put the facts in there and he was a bit understated, but his strategy is this. And I would argue, as much as I'm one of those, I just want to go in there. I want to slice and dice. I don't want to leave any, I want to go in there like the junkyard dog and just crunch all the bones until you just have a bag of skin and all crunched up bones inside to drag around the yard for the rest of the month. What Case did is he made all the presentations as best as he could. Other attorneys reviewed it, so he didn't do it in a total vacuum. You have a bunch of attorneys on Tina's case here. But he was understated, and what he did was he left room for the judges to be aggressive. Imagine you go into the psychology of doing stuff in a courtroom like this. They're just all over the map. His theory was if he goes into aggressive, then the judges have to tone him down or back off or not appear to overly take a side in the case because it's pleaded a certain way, because they're supposed to be, judging the law, not the presentations. Case made his strong arguments in the presentation, and the fact that his arguments are pretty good is emphasized by the fact that the judges got it. When they're pressing the prosecutor, and in fact, the hearing was set for a certain amount of time, they went overtime and kept going, which is very rare in these kinds of cases, actually. They stayed with it. And the other thing is that they allowed it to be broadcast live. Now, that's not common at all. And there was all sorts of pressure within the machine, if you will, not to do such a thing. So I think that there was already an understanding because of all the pressure we brought in Tina's case. I did 50 shows on Tina's situation a couple months back. And people might think I've just gone on to this stuff. No, what I've done is I've backed off to give other room for other people to come in so that I'm not just trying to own the whole thing. This is a team effort. You have a whole bunch of people here. So we may have triggered it and got it rolling again and got a lot of attention, including at the White House and Truth Social and all the other podcasters. And everybody's been bringing great stuff, important stuff to the fore. What Case did is he made the presentation and the briefings, and judges show that they got it, and then they took the ball and ran with it. They're dragging that bag of bones around. That prosecutor was answering to the judges. She wasn't responding to Case. She was having to respond to the judges. I think at the end of the day, it was far more effective than some of the people understand, even people very close to the case, even within my own coalition here. And I kind of pointed that out, that it sometimes these things, there's more going on in a different way than you understand. Does that make sense for you?
Oh, definitely. I appreciate the background. on it as well. One thing I'm going to say too before I play this, and if you want me to stop at anything, just say, "Hey, hold it up right there." And if you want to comment, at any point, it's only 3 minutes, but if there's anything that there's striking that you want to kind of comment, just say whatever. But after the first, I think it's the first judge, maybe the second time they ask a question, maybe the second judge jumps in or whatever. She is just dumbfounded for a second. She's just like looking around, like, "Please, somebody say,
the prosecutor."
Please, somebody say something, like make it stop." And so I'm going to pull you over here for now, just so we can see all the judges and all the reaction here. But
well, and let me just add this. I just want to add this one thing. As beat up as we've been on this the whole time, I told your audience and other audiences that this case should never, ever have even gone to a grand jury, let alone be prosecuted. What these judges are questioning is the premise for ever even having put Tina on trial. That the basis for even going to a grand jury was false. And then the judge pontificated and presided over a case where the jury was not given proper instructions, and the jury wasn't wrong. What happened with the jury was that critical details, critical facts were never allowed to come before them. And then the judge's instructions are such that the jury could only find a certain way. A jury, is said, here's the parameters, here's what the law says, here's what you've heard. And so they kind of get cowed into a certain ruling. And that's what these judges are saying here, is that, wait a second, you created a false premise on numerous things where the jury, came to a decision, but based on a false understanding of the law. So I'm just trying to help everybody. Look, this audience, and by the way, I love your audience because they're a bit more, they're schooled with the group of guys that you hang with better than a lot of other audiences. It's not just grandstanding. It's not just chest beating. You guys actually have a lot of details within this audience. That's why I enjoy them. So I'm just saying that as you hear this, you're going to talk to other people. This is a more influential audience than a lot of other audiences out there. You talk to more people, you articulate with more precision. So I'm glad to do this because you're more mature, spiritually, technically, politically, all sorts of things. So when you go to talk to other people around you, you're going to be able to help rein this in, including other patriots that want to help Tina but don't understand these little details. In a conversation we had the other day, something that was people wanted to get to Trump and have a particular meeting and educate Trump on something. And I had to rein him in. Excuse me, you're not educating him on anything in these areas. What the deal is that he's waiting on this particular thing to see that public comprehension has risen enough that when he acts, he's not acting in a vacuum. He needs the public moving with him. And so in order to move at a pace that's digestible, we have to kind of have a broader cross-section of the public that gets certain issues that can articulate them to the people around him, so he's not moving out ahead all by himself. And so audiences like this are critical because they carry a larger cross-section with them, friends, relatives, acquaintances, people they communicate on the internet with at distance. It helps the country to move together in step and not the president just having got out isolated or certain people around him. And so taking a minute to understand this stuff so you're articulating properly and then hear something like this hearing and be able to converse about it from maybe a better perspective, not just reacting to it, but working with it. You see the judges all of a sudden siding really with stuff that we've been talking about, things that I said, this trial should never have happened. What are we doing here? Was the judge out of line with the way it conducted the entire prosecution? Was the prosecution out of line in even bringing the case? Things that we've articulated. Now you're getting a 3-judge hearing panel reviewing how this case got here, what was going on, everything, and excuse me, saying bullshit to all of it. I think it's fantastic. Okay, so now listen, I hope that helped the audience kind of understand their role in this. You're actually critical to getting the country in the right place, because this audience probably, the size of this audience is magnified 100 times over the next several weeks. As you communicate with people, they start to get it, they communicate with other people. You carry more weight than some of the other audiences because you're a more articulate, better educated, with details group, not from what I'm saying, but from what you do, just as the way you conduct your show and the people you run with it and the way the conversations happen in the backside. Is that clicking for you? Am I saying it the right way?
Absolutely, and I appreciate the kudos, sir. But yeah,
Yeah.
we have wonderful world patriots, and a lot of them have been with us for a very long time, and we've been waiting for some justice here for sure. So I appreciate it. But yeah, this is almost like a comedy sketch in itself too, right here. So like I said, if anytime you want me to stop or whatever, because there is a point where they bring up a word, they're like with or whatever, and he kind of makes a big point of it. Yeah,
might.
So,
and by the way, I don't want to interrupt because I want people to get the flow. We might want to come back, but I think we did the prelude. I didn't want to do it after the fact because then I want you to be listening the way I hear it and see if your audience agrees with me.
Absolutely. All right, let's let it roll here then. Bing.
Is it your position that a person can still be convicted of a crime with which they were never charged and with which the jury was never instructed, as long as the evidence is sufficient?
Yes, I think that is what the case law indicates, that if it's just, in this case, I'll just point out too that, I don't have the language of the statutes that you're citing in your hypothetical, but it was one word, might, and it was already...
Yeah, but that one word distinguishes it from a felony to a misdemeanor.
And this case made an extra sentence, 15 more months in the Department of Corrections that couldn't have been given had it been a misdemeanor conviction. It clearly affects a substantial right.
And I'll just say, I'm confused as to why the people are continuing to maintain that the proper remedy on this isn't to enter the conviction for the misdemeanor, because the indictment used the word might, and the jury was instructed on that, so that's what the verdict is. I am baffled as to the position that's being taken that we can somehow overlook that and still enter the felony because the evidence that was presented at trial would have supported the felony. Are you still maintaining that position in front of us here today?
Yes, that is our position.
What case law supports that argument?
I'm sorry?
What case law supports that argument?
I've cited it in my brief. I don't have it right in front of me, but the case...
It's the omitted elements
yes,
case
correct.
law, right? Mm-hmm. But that's just where the element was omitted, and but the element that was omitted wasn't in dispute. Here, the jury was affirmatively misinstructed. It was instructed on the misdemeanor, and it found her guilty of that misdemeanor beyond a reasonable doubt. This isn't the omission of an element. This is a misinstructed jury. How can we correct that by saying, no, we'll just assume that because she could have also been convicted of the felony, we enter that even though we don't have a jury verdict? That's a...
I understand it's a difficult position
Okay.
for the people to be in. But
it's not a position you have to take.
But thank you. But I do believe that the omitted element language applies because, to me, I understand. I can hear from the way you're talking about it that it seems more egregious to add this extra word than it is to omit an element. But to me, omitting an element is a pretty big deal, and the fact that can be
except in those cases, at least the person was originally charged with the elemental language. Here, never on the table.
That is true, but if I can just add, and again, it seems that I will not be able to convince you, but I just want to put my argument out there, which is that there wasn't a confusion from the parties about what they were talking about, because the correct statutory citation was used. So they were on notice of the statutory citation. The language was incorrect, but the statutory citation was correct.
Couldn't that also mean that the prosecution was on notice that they'd only charged, since the language was correct, they'd only charged that language and not,
Well,
I mean, both of them were on notice of something wrong.
Oh, yes. I guess what I'm saying, Your Honor, is just that there wasn't a notice problem because there was the statutory citation. And the parties treated it as though, I think it was an oversight. I think everybody believed that if they had charged and used the language for that's what the record bears out, in my estimation.
An oversight, Juan. In her estimation, it's an oversight. And that is all very confusing because it sounds to me like originally she was supposed to be maybe at least on one of the charges. It should have been a misdemeanor, but they elevated it to a felony. So I don't know if were there multiple charges. I know there were multiple.
Oh, there's multiple charges. Let me help people out this way. This hearing is like an hour and a half. It's supposed to be an hour, and you're just seeing one bite of it, but it's representative of the way the whole meeting went. These judges are very aggressively trying to figure out what the hell are you guys thinking over at the prosecutor's office, and what was the judge thinking here? Because none of this actually passes muster. And so what you're actually getting in that one little bite is just representative of the whole thing. These guys were unimpressed, these judges, with all these critical aspects of the trial. And were, the whole point of an appeals court is now you have judges judging the actions of a judge. Do we want to let this happen in our courts? Are we going to rein this judge in? Is there something that was justice somehow denied? And in the whole hearing, you can tell that there's a sense that they want nothing to do with allowing this to go forward the way it is. The problem is, in a perfect world, as soon as we'd probably get a decision from them, it's probably a month. Every day is critical to Tina. But Colorado and its justice system is really on trial here. And the other thing that's going to be on trial before this is all over is the prison system. And it's got its day of reckoning coming too. By the way, in the background, and people have forgotten about this, but when we were hard at it, back in early December, late November, early December, on Tina's situation, and Trump, there's other things going on in the background that have to occur that Trump is hard on. He had federal investigators come in and begin to review how Colorado is running its prison system. And so they're looking to see if there's violations of civil rights and like that for the prisoners in there. They have civil rights too. And that investigation's ongoing right now also in the background. And in the past, in prisons around the country, over and over, especially in the last 150 years, last 100 years, at times when prison systems in states get out of line too far, the feds would step in and actually take over the entire prison or even statewide systems to get them back under control, where they're violating the civil rights of prisoners who are, oftentimes American citizens like that, but there's certain civil rights that even a prisoner's supposed to have. And that's a possibility with Colorado. And all the stuff going on behind the scenes in the prisons in Colorado, especially on the women's side, it's like, okay, somebody step in, ring the bell, stop it right now. You've got to rein in the Colorado system. So Colorado's in deep shit on a number of fronts. And then Trump, by the way, just as one other side thing, you would say that Trump's penalizing Colorado because he's moving Space Force, he's stopping contracts, he's shutting off the money flow. Well, if the state is being operated seditiously, against federal, national, the rest of us, interests. How do you rein the state in? Why would you send more contracts or allow stuff to continue on if they're going to try to, hang you with their bullshit? So that Trump is shutting down the flow of money there, and the agreements and contracts there makes perfect sense when you're trying to rein in a state that has gone, sideways, crazy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. They've gone rogue, and I feel like not only are they doing that there, but they're also making a specific highlight of Minnesota. Now, Juan, I'd like to get your take on this one, because I kind of say it tongue in cheek and kind of joking, because to me, you look at it in a perfect world, right? And I say, okay, Juan, I'm going to give you a scenario here. Unfortunately, I'm going to put you as Kamala Harris. Okay, you're now going to be running.
Ooh, that hurts. Oh, that's painful.
Sorry, but so now you're running for president, okay? And we got to find you the best vice president we can find out there. We want to bolster your position there to make people say, you know what, this is a solid team right here, and we can vote for this. This is a team we can get behind. So we need to find the best guy to support you for your presidency. Okay, we're going to give you a bunch of choices, and you come up with Tim Waltz. All right, the jazz hands, Richard Simmons imitating weirdo that comes running around, like, couldn't be more awkward. I don't think they could have found a more awkward person if they were looking for it in politics. So like my question to you is, like, I don't know, do you see that as the same way I see it? Because I almost see it like, this guy is a complete dipshit. Like, let's be honest, we know this, right? But also all of the fraud that's going on there, like, it highlighted this guy who even people who live, that I'm friends with that live a state over had never heard of before he ran for vice president with Kamala Harris. So for me, it was almost laughable to say that you were genuinely trying to win any election with Kamala Harris and Tim Waltz. So I just find it kind of funny. But any take on that?
Well, there's actually several things. Number one, a vice president's supposed to be there, not really seen that much. So they're not upstaging the president, but they're in reserve and able to take command on a moment's notice. Imagine if Kamala had become president and, heaven forbid something happened, horrible, or, she had a brain fart and suddenly, couldn't function. Can you imagine, seriously, a country run by Waltz? I mean, you'd have a lot of people, no, please send me to hell. This is worse. Right. I need to go someplace where there's even a pretend of sanity. Okay. Hell is a place where reason doesn't exist. But it would have been beyond reason to have him, and let me just say this, and it's grotesque to say it, but I want to remind people, who is this Waltz character? Years ago, he was admitted, and we've had the articles and like that, but it's just been glossed over. He was admitted for medical treatment in a severe situation where his life was on the line, where under some bizarre circumstance, he had ingested so much horse sperm that it nearly killed him. Now, on what basis? Where can you ever imagine such a bizarre, crazy, insane, asinine story as that? And what crowd are you running with where this somehow seemed like a good idea at the time or whatever, and that's the person you want. We got upset years ago over whether or not a VP candidate had ever smoked marijuana, let alone a presidential. Right. And then you have these kinds of stories. How far have we gone, off the rails that we can't find better candidates than that? The old saying, from Truman, when the country maybe was running halfway right, allegedly, and I'm not a great Truman fan, I'm just telling you the story. But he had a saying, he said, in every town in America, thinking of flyover country, small towns like that, there's a person with the skill sets, the maturity, the understanding that could be president. When the country's working right, That's really a pretty true statement that if in a crunch, we've got plenty of great people who have leadership skills, they're good businessmen. They could step up, they could be called on in a crunch and do probably a pretty good job. As president, you're making decisions, but your decisions are based on weighing out what people around you have brought you. And if you get the right people in there to advise you, then you can come to the correct decision based on information that's presented to you. And you got to be the guy, okay, this is where we're going. This is what we're doing. But we have a country that in every town, we got somebody like that. You're telling me that America is so screwed up at this point that there's nobody better, or most of the towns in America, if you got in a crunch, the person you would pick is on par with a Walz? Are you seriously? But let me just add this one thing. This is really the core to that whole discussion. And I'm thinking of your audience right now. How do you really want to respond to that? A person like Walz, in my opinion, does not actually represent the majority of the people in his state. The reason that he got into office, and we see it more every day now with the data coming forward about the stuff, just like with Tina and the Dominion machines and the operations in Colorado, Walz could never have gotten into office in an honest election. The reason that he's here, the reason he got to high office is because people behind the scenes were able to manipulate and put people into office that suited their purposes, that represented them and not the people of the state. And by the way, when those people that are pulling the strings behind the scenes to determine the outcome of elections are picking people, they want people that are easily controlled, that they can manipulate, that will be puppets on a string. So what are those people like that got a Walz into office, that got a Walz up through the machine far enough that they were able to say, we want our guy to be in the vice president's office close to the presidency so that, we can, have an accident happen with Kamala. You know how they'd have taken out Kamala, by the way? They'd have done it on corruption, just like they took out Agnew. They'd take out somebody like her, and then they get a guy like Walton who's even more corrupt, but that they can control for their agenda, and you just take the country off to the left, and who knows where it's going. So at the end of the day, a Walz situation is an election integrity issue. It is the entire reason why what Tina's doing and did is so crucial to the overall situation in the country. And then all the other things that you and I would talk about, Venezuela, Mideast, everything else. So
have you seen and so I'm going to pull a couple up for you. I'm sure you're aware of a bunch of them, but they have, in my opinion, been dropping us some more of these. I think, at this point it's unnecessary because we kind of know the connection, but I think they do it kind of to bolster some of the people's morale, perhaps. But and it definitely works for me. And I'm scrolling here. I wasn't planning on pulling this up today, but essentially all of the Qisms that are coming out of the Department of Labor and the various different departments, and they gave me like a really good advertisement for my show. As they posted out, Hold the Line, which is my Monday night, my formerly my Wednesday night show. And it's now my Monday night show. And so here we go. So here's one of them. And here's the interesting part too. And I'm gonna basically hold the line on this one. So hold the line, Patriots, our nation is worth fighting for, right? Now, literally I was on a show and I uploaded a video that day where I said it on the show and uploaded a video, and I said, at this point, there's no doubt that they're connected to President Trump and the team, right? And then I said, so it really comes down to at this point is, do you trust POTUS? Do you trust President Trump or not? Right. And thinking that he will do, what you want. Is he really doing what we want? And I'm scrolling here, and stay away from frozen dessert snacks, Juan, not ice cream. An hour and 40 minutes. That thing stayed the same. Look at that. That's an hour and 40 minutes later.
Right, here it is.
Hour and 40 minutes later, dude.
My gosh.
So here's another one. So this one came out like that same day, and I think it was overlapping. So I certainly don't think it was a result of me uploading a video, but trust the plan, and then it comes out with trust Trump. And we've had so many of these this last, hold the line, trust Trump. I forgot what the other ones were saying, but there's so many more. Like there's absolutely a crap load of these in the last 2 weeks or so.
We're in a meme war, and part of the problem is even within this broader community that we talk to, there's some of the folks that I enjoy that are great folks, but they have succumbed to the propaganda, and the common theme seems to revolve primarily around Trump's become a functionary just doing the bidding of Netanyahu and Israel and all that, because the lobby that's pushing this behind the scenes is you got to think of where the money is coming from and who the players are.
Yeah.
It's the anti-Israel lobby. And so a lot of the stuff that you see that you think is just anti-Trump because of ICE or other things, the players, when you look at who the players are and their history, they more often than not have this anti-Israel side, and the group that's pushing it to try and undermine Trump at this critical moment. And so just so people know, I mean, I could get into it way deep. I'm just giving a very overview gloss thing. And part of that, by the way, just so you know, is out of this same banking crowd, City of London crowd. They're using what they need to undermine Trump in other places, make it not obvious what their real agenda is. He's going after them on the money, and he's going after them on their wars all over the planet that they keep trying to foster. And just one brief word on the Israel thing, we'll probably talk about it later, but what Trump is doing is taking away the excuses that are used by the Israeli lobby, which is the largest lobby in DC, have been for eons, why they need all of this money and support and everything else. He's defanging the people around him, the options around them, so that their ability to say, yeah, but we're going to be destroyed, it's all over for us, everything else, we're eliminating those parties and their power. So all of a sudden, their woe is me side isn't as powerful, and now we can deal with them. So anyway.
And dude, I don't think I've ever even talked to you. I don't think we have, really, to be honest with you, because it never came around. But like, I don't think we've talked much about the Charlie Kirk situation. But this dude, this stuff that's coming out about her, dude, I don't even know, or if you even want to discuss this. But like,
no, let's talk about it. I don't. We'll finish with our thought. Look, creative people, their minds go 1,000 different directions. And so we have to kind of rein it in. I apologize to the audience, but one thing leads to another, and we keep coming back to other related subjects. So I didn't mean to take us completely off point, but you triggered me on something, and I wanted to get that out because I know it is something that the audience wants to hear about. So
that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. I'm loving it. And this was just interesting because I put the funny thing is, a few people posted this out there, like, oh, look at Erica Kirk CIA video, and it got community noted, right, Juan? And the community note was like, no, she's not CIA. This is, Erica France Kirk, years ago, and she's just making. Here's the exact quote. Clip comes from 2015 public documentary Black Star on grid threats, not CIA produced. You got that, Juan? It's not CIA produced, nothing to do with the CIA whatsoever. Available on YouTube since the upload. It features Erica France, again, not anything to do with the CIA, presenting alongside former CIA director James Woolsey. And I'm like, wait, how is this girl who's Well, you know what it is? Her parents have an EMP business. That's why she's making videos with the former director of the CIA. And here's the last thing I'll say until I get one of your comments. One of the wonderful world patriots out there found this in the very beginning, and they show you in this video how there's, well, wherever the hell it is, it's basically a binary code that comes across, right? And so it's 010101 whatever, and so this dude, Astute Actual, found it. 101001001 actually translates to 329. That post goes into the drops that talks about follow the wives, which is just a weird coincidence, perhaps. I don't know. But I just find this whole thing that she's doing all this stuff when I thought she was in like a Romanian charity and orphanage or whatever the hell was going on. And so it's all very, very odd to me. But I feel like, again, it's very sloppy to have left this copy on YouTube for all of us to kind of find here later. So I don't know if you have any comments on this whole situation, but it's like this, and I think it kind of relates a little bit to what you were just talking about, like the anti-Israel thing, and certain people are blackpilled and calling Trump a Zionist, and then it comes down to this, which in certain aspects I agree with, like, wait, I'm not going with the official narrative, right? Like maybe I'm a crazy Candace person on this aspect, right? Because I think that the idea that he was shot with a 30-06 and that he had magic skin or magic bones that stopped the 30-06 shot is absolutely laughable, right? Like, so that part alone, and then the weird activity of the guys that were his security jumping over the table, throwing something in his back pocket, and then immediately leaving. It's like, wait, you're going over here to render aid to this guy. You jump over the table to help him, and then you meet up with some other guy in the corner, hand something off to him, and then you both run off. So yeah, the whole thing was just very weird for me. I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to add, or I don't think I've ever heard
slow
you talk
down,
about
and maybe a lot of the audience has seen this, maybe they haven't. So let's just slow down for a second. I had Phil Lyman, governor candidate in Utah, had his election stolen from him. Big long story. I had him with me out in Washington D.C. Private residence for a couple of days just prior to this. He wanted me to come to Utah and join him if I had time to be at this Charlie Kirk presentation. I had other stuff that was crucial at the moment that I just couldn't leave, but so he left, and then he left, went home, and I think it was the following morning was there at this event. And I've seen stuff like Candace went off on, how this was a setup and Phil was part of it and blah, blah, blah. And it just was silly. Known Phil for a long time. There's no starting place for that discussion. And it's faded because it wasn't true. Like he was somehow in on the fix. And because this person that, they claim did the shooting, walked in front of, a house that belongs to a relative of Phil, and Phil had some video, or somebody had some video, and it tied into it. They started connecting a lot of dots that actually were just, circumstantial. Look, in Utah, everybody's related to everybody. Phil's probably got 1 billion relatives there. They're all, they're very, a lot of families all hang out in the same places. And then Phil's reasonably well-to-do. He's not a billionaire. He's, probably worth a couple million, but, he's got relatives that own property in decent places. So, okay, whatever. There's a lot of extrapolation that occurred, connecting dots that, pretty questionable to connect all those dots. That said, from day one, from the very instant this happened, within minutes of it occurring, and I was aware of it, I was going, wow, that doesn't look right. Something, my first gut instinct was that just doesn't look right. Something doesn't feel right. And then they had instantly these videos out with the shooter running across the roof and jumping down and all that. I'm like, man, something just didn't set right. And I think that still is correct, but we don't have everything else we need. And I think the investigation is totally skewed somehow. Look, the next day, following weekend, they're dismantling the crime scene, putting concrete all over the thing, changing the whole terrain. Even the way the crime scene was handled, proper investigative technique, I don't think, I didn't see lots of things that I think should have been done in a normal situation were not done at all. And, I'm pretty good on this stuff. And I talking with some of the other guys that have these particular skill sets, I don't know what exactly happened. I just know that whatever we've been told so far is not what happened. Because look, if I jump out there, or some of the other people who have a lot of knowledge directly into what occurred here, jump in and come to a conclusion, then I think they would be wrong. I do think that we have a bunch of questions that have not been answered correctly or fully or transparently that are valid, important questions. And without answers to those questions, you can't come to a conclusion. And so part of what I guess my criticism of Candace, who in the past I've loved so much of what she said, very clear, articulated on a lot of things that I really enjoyed. But there's a lot of, in a legal world, a lot of conclusory statements as though it is a established, proven fact. These statements are incorrect because a lot of things that have been said are not established, proven facts. They are questions. They should be put in an inquiring tone. What's the rest of the details on this thing, that thing? Why did the detectives not do certain things as they came into the crime scene? Why did the police chief allow certain things to be done the way they were? There's all sorts of problems. And of course, will it come out in the prosecution? Let's use Tina's situation. Look how much of an effect the prosecutor in Tina's case had in the way this case proceeded forward. The judges are questioning the state's position or the prosecutor's position on what the charges were, what the crimes were, what was presented to the grand jury, what was handed down for indictments that got her into a criminal case in the first place, and before a judge and a jury and then a conviction. The same thing applies here. A prosecutor has a lot of leverage in how things move forward and what they choose to focus on, and it leverages a judge, a jury, to get towards a particular outcome that may or may not be justice. In Tina's case, it wasn't justice, and that triad of appeals judges agree with us based on how they were reacting to things, the questions they were asking. They certainly were very concerned that justice was not being done by the way the prosecutor and the state had handled the case at that point in time. It's the same thing here. The prosecutor could go forward with this case with the shooter, but where's your corpus delicti? The corpus delicti is the body of the evidence. Present me the actual evidence. I want the real evidence, not just innuendo, not just, he said, she said, give me the real evidence. A lot of details here make no sense. The whole buried the gun, hid it behind a tree,
I know, right?
Jumped off the building and it was in his pants leg. There's, a part of the thing here, I will tell you this is, if there was a larger setup, if somebody needed a magic act to distract from what really happened, is there chicanery being done where there's the magic glove, the explosion, the drama, and all of that hides what really occurred. I don't think this kid shot him. That's the fact. I don't think the kid shot him.
I agree.
Okay.
And
I
it's
don't think
funny.
it's possible he shot him. The question is there some plan behind the scenes to keep everybody distracted on that, while the real situation, it's like the Kennedy assassination. You have so many red herrings. Can you ever get to the truth? And if you do see the truth, can you even recognize it with all the clutter around it? Because everybody's gone down so many rabbit trails. They're so exhausted, it's so convoluted, that you can't get to the real truth. It's just like, and this would be my criticism of Candace. Okay, with no real evidence, just circumstantial stuff, you're accusing Phil Lyman of being involved in the setup and the shooting and the cover-up. Just because he was present, he was close by. Phil was on the stage just a couple of minutes before Charlie was shot. He was the last speaker on the stage before Charlie was shot. Oh, so is he because he was there? Well, he lives there. He supports this. If somebody wanted to, hey, I was a big contributor to Turning Point earlier on, significant before everybody else showed up when it was still a relatively small organization. I stopped because they started going places, especially in the election stuff, that I didn't agree with. And I was very vocal behind the scenes with a couple of key people that I felt that they were on a wrong track and needed to back up. But on principle of college and high school students and young men especially getting engaged and being involved, I thought it was so critical. And then Candace was very articulate and stuff. Man, I handed some of her stuff out to people because I thought she was doing a really good job of articulating certain principles. At this point in time, though, it starts looking like crazy talk. And I guess let me just say this too, for this audience specifically, because I'm trying to get to certain principles in how we conduct ourselves moving forward right now. We can ask questions, and there's nothing wrong with asking questions. And even, let's say Phil Lyman, because he's a friend. If somebody wants to question the circumstances, why he was there, how close he was the speaker beforehand, he's only a few feet away when Charles, I don't have a problem with people questioning that and going, what if or whatever. But that's different than making a conclusory statement as though you know a fact and present it as the fact that he had to be involved in the whole thing and the setup and blah, blah, blah. That ends up damaging a real investigation, the things that we're really trying to do as a group. So we have to be careful that we don't allow even our friends within this broader movement of conservative patriots to take us off point and lose our credibility. We need to be even more careful to guard against that happening, especially at this moment, because there's so many things that are going to happen now over the next many months that it's we as a group, your audience specifically, we can certainly ask questions, but we're winning. We're ahead of the game. You've got better, more vetted information than many of the other audiences out there, especially in the mainstream. So you don't need to be wild. You're on solid ground. Yard it in a bit. Stay in a winning position, because your credibility amongst friends, neighbors, people you talk to, what the enemy would like, this globalist crowd would like, is for this audience to lose credibility on something where they go off on a tangent. Next thing you know, it gets proven wrong. It's not valid. They got conned. And then everything else that you're saying and doing goes out with that. And your ability to be effective within the nation to help us move and step in the right direction to get to, election integrity, to get to monetary integrity, to support what the president's doing. It gets destroyed because you're wrong on one, little thing, the fly in the
I've seen
ointment.
that.
And we're ahead of the game right now. So we don't have to, there's this thing within the media where people always want the first one and I got it and before anybody else and I knew it and I told you so. I told you all this before. Relax. We're ahead of the game. You consolidate your positions and reinforce them at a certain point. You're not trying to get new ground. We've bitten off plenty to chew right now. The most important thing on the elections, Tina, things related to that, Venezuela tied in the elections, all these other things, how they tie in the elections, and then the monetary and the bigger fight even ahead, even after elections. It's Trump's two main things that he needs before he leaves office: honest elections and honest money. And this audience is well armed on that stuff to have conversations with the people around them so that people understand the most important things that we have to do as a nation: get back to honest elections and get honest money. And a lot of the other stuff that they're worried about gets sorted out just with doing that. I know I'm just listening how people are hearing it, and they're probably like, "You're all over the map." I'm trying to help in the sense that we have to think about the moment we're in. While everybody else thinks there's 1,000 things going on and you can't keep track of it, actually, there's not that much. Things are consolidating right now. And it's coming down to the most key issues. You can look at almost anything that's crossing the news wires right now. And one way or another, it's who got into power and how did they get there? And what are they doing when they got in power, and whether or not they're there legitimately and the things they're doing are legitimate, which at the end of the day is elections. And then the monetary and who's in charge of our money and our money supply. And that's this fight between Treasury and Federal Reserve. And Trump is doing that, and it just doesn't stop. Even to have the rest of the people across the globe over there at Chatham House fussing about the Federal Reserve. Yeah, because we're going to shut that fucking thing down and move the power over to Treasury, which is constitutional, honest money, and not a note, but like Kennedy had a certificate of deposit, a silver certificate, which is a receipt for silver in a vault on a pallet that has a serial number tied to it, no more bills printed than what the value of the silver is on that pallet. Backed, stuff backed with real metal, not just a paper politician's promise. So.
And actually, I got two more questions for you because I know you're in Las Vegas, and we're gonna raid you into my buddy Rambo in a second. But so two questions, and one just popped. The last one is the silver one because I definitely have some questions for you. But
yeah. And by the way, I have a beautiful view up here. I always get
gorgeous,
neat rooms, and I don't know if your audience got to see much of that, but I'm watching all the helicopters come by. So here at the Trump, they have the scenic tours that go out to the Grand Canyon and other places, or just around the valley here. And it's like a NASCAR circuit. You see the helicopters coming off from the airport, racing past the top of the Trump here. And they seem to like to use this as a rallying point. And so the outgoing stuff goes off on the east side of the Trump, and the returning stuff comes back on the west side. And I mean, it's a helicopter every 30 seconds. I mean, it's just crazy. And that just goes on all day. Yeah, and when I get it's just Jen and I here today, but when I get the presidential suites that are at either end, then you get, you're just like eyeball to eyeball with them as they go by, and it just never stops, So anyway,
that's badass. Yeah, I can see the mountains in the background. And the funny thing is, I know you're in Vegas, but me flying into I flew into Los Angeles one time, and I didn't like the vibe of it at all. I had like a very depressed vibe when I was there, and I don't get homesick. I was in Texas for 2 weeks before that, Chicago, whatever. But when I got to LA, I had felt this down energy. But as we were pulling in, I was like, oh my God, there's mountains everywhere. Like I just thought LA was this like big flat area. I had no idea it was kind of mountainous, like kind of like what you're looking at, surrounded by mountains, essentially.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I lived up in Montecito for quite a while, and that was part of what I loved the most was where I was at was like, I don't know, 1900 feet, and I had this amazing view morning and night. I just loved it, and I love the rolling hills and having that kind of a location. It changes everything. The nice thing about where I was at there was in the morning, a lot of times you'd have a fog or a dew. So if I go down into town, I have to put the convertible top up because it'd be so cold driving through town. It was like a wintertime. But up on the hill, you're up above that. You'd have this beautiful sunny days. You'd see all the fog. You wouldn't see anything, just the fog over the area. And as it cleared as the day went on, I just loved that so much. We were just in LA the other day. Well, we were there for my friend Mike Reagan's funeral. Mike and I had been very, very close. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I know you guys were friends for a long time. Sorry to hear that. Brother.
Yeah, we were very close. And
that's Ronald Reagan's son, right?
Yeah. And by the way, he was the adopted son, not Ron, the ballet dancer. Yeah. Mike, he wrote a book. It's a great book, Twice Adopted. And, but, Mike, one of the things he talked about at different times was that President Reagan, the entire time as Mike was growing up, never once you will never find a quote from Reagan where he talks about his adopted son, Mike. He talks about his son, Mike. He never considered him anything other than his son. And he was, and so there was never any question like he was grafted in or whatever. He was his son. And by the way, just for the audience, let me just slow down for a second here. We got a lot of things I'd love to talk about, but Mike, there's so much. I mean, we were very close when Mike was first getting into the radio stuff in the early '90s. We talked quite a bit. He at the time, and I knew Rush. And that's why Mike and I were talking. The stuff Rush would call, and he'd have a question on something going on in the military or intelligence community, and maybe the underlying politics behind it, and didn't understand certain things. And he was very sharp, but he still had questions because he was coming out of primarily a sports announcer type of thing. His grandfather was very heavily into the legal stuff, lived to 104, wrote books on Lincoln and stuff like that. Just genius. And Rush got that from within the family. But a lot of times there's minutia of how things happen, say, in the intelligence world or military and things like that. And then behind the scenes story with stuff going on with Russia, which I knew a lot of, firsthand. And so I'd get the call, hey, can you explain this to me or whatever? And Mike backed into that. Now, Rush's style was he would slice and dice a subject so much and talk to various people to get an understanding. He'd get so deep that when he'd come on his show in the first hour, just a second here, I got to send a call away here. When he'd come on his show, Rush would explain an issue, and he would be so thorough that all the callers were left with that they could do was to say ditto, right? It's just, I agree with you, ditto. And then they'd try to re-articulate what he just said, but Rush didn't leave anything on the table for the most part. So the rest of the show was them agreeing with Rush. Mike, when he was doing his show, and you'd have to understand a lot of the details, Mike, He's the president's son. People think he'd be very heavily favored. You know, Mike, when his dad became governor, California, all of his friends, everybody's like, oh man, you got it made now. You're set for life. You'll have all the deals and contracts like that. And President Reagan told Mike right off the bat, just to get you in the mindset of who this person was and how things work in this realm. President Reagan told Mike, he said, I was never happy with the fact that President Kennedy made his brother the Attorney General, Bobby Kennedy, Attorney General. That was like nepotism. I understand somebody you can trust, an ally and all that. Never sat right with me. I am never going to do that. That is not me. So he says to Mike, you're on your own. You have to go make a way for yourself. You're not building and piggybacking on what I'm doing. If you find your way into politics or business or whatever, it's not because I, made a call for you, because I'm not that guy. And so he put Mike, here he's all excited, all his friends, he's going to be fat, he's going to have the great jobs, everything else. He gets a job over at Lockheed, essentially helping supply parts for various suppliers. And he has to get it all on his own. When he gets there, all of a sudden, everything nepotism. He's making very middle to low side wages. He has skill sets. He was a outboard racer, and that's part of why we enjoyed each other so much was the racing, and especially in the boats like that. But he's over at Lockheed. They end up letting him go because they didn't want it to look like it was a pay-for-play thing. He's not making any money. So he has to go out. He goes out and goes back to the boat racing and does some promotional stuff he got a 38-foot offshore racer that he then went out and did charity events for several years and was able to pay the bills that way. In fact, one of the records that he set was from Ketchikan, Alaska to Seattle at 14 hours and change. And I've got a boat that I want to go run. I think I can do it about an hour or so faster. And we've talked about it a number of times. I've asked his son, Cameron, to co-pilot with me. And I don't know if his mom will let him or not. She doesn't want to do anything dangerous. But I want to go break that record. Mike was good with it. We've gone through the layout and like that a number of times, and where I thought I could do a little bit better. And but anyway, the long and short of it is Mike had to fight his whole way through. When he got into the radio stuff, he had campaigned for his dad 3 times. Remember, Reagan ran for president in 1976 and lost to Carter by a way very questionable election there, and then won in 1980 overwhelmingly because of certain things that happened, and then again in 1984. So Mike campaigned in all of that and rubbed shoulders with all the political people, the money people, all the different things. He knew that environment really well. And this charity stuff, he dealt with a lot of the same people as he's doing the charity stuff with the boat racing and like that. When he got into the radio stuff, his original business model was to duplicate Rush in the afternoons. And that's what the people that gave him the show, got him started, wanted to do was be Rush in the afternoon. So Mike could pontificate on a lot of subjects because he knew the material pretty well. And he and I talk on certain things, but he had amazing Rolodex. He'd call all sorts of people he'd pick up because he's Reagan's son.
Right.
But then to pontificate on that stuff, it's still a different level. So at one particular point, he and his wife Colleen and I were having dinner, and I was pretty adamant with him. I says, Mike, you're not Rush. And it's actually when people are driving to work in the morning and they're with Rush or they're at work, he says everything he says. It's concise, it's precise. He does it, and then you have a bunch of people just yeah the rest of the morning. I don't think you want to duplicate that. What you have that Rush has, but not in the same way, is you have this amazing Rolodex. And by the afternoon, the politicians that are tied up at Washington, D.C. all morning and across the country, they're starting to break free. The dust is starting to settle on the day. In the morning, they can't get on the phone with Rush. They're in franking meetings. It's to outer space. But in the afternoon, stuff is going on. They can break free out of a hearing or whatever. Or on the business side, the business days a little bit, they're a little bit more relaxed. You're in the afternoon, drive home, and you can bring those people on. You don't have to be the expert on every subject in the world, which Rush kind of came across that way. You can bring on people that are subject matter experts and then do some comparative analysis, add your own stuff in there. You don't bring them on for an hour. Art Bell was a very close friend also, and he would have people on him for 3 hours and take everything apart and really do it, and it'd be fantastic. It was amazing. But
Those are the
it's
good old
not,
days.
yeah, it's not the same. I said, Mike, what you got to do, people, they're leaving work. They got 15 minutes before they get to the kids at soccer, moms, dads, everything else. You come in and do short segments. And then the other thing is this, most people don't know this. Mike was, Rush was number one, and Mike became number two in the daytime talk stuff. Over 600 affiliates eventually. Rush actually had less. He had in the mid 500s, and Reagan actually beat him at one point in time. They were both made honorary members of the 94th Congress because they got in the midterms, which we're coming up on here now under Clinton. In the midterms, they were considered critical with the information they got out to the public about what was going on in the country, that the Republicans won the midterms in Clinton's first term. And so they were made honorary members in the 94th Congress, Rush and Mike Reagan. But what I told Mike dinner that night, and I was pretty forceful because he fought hard. No, you bring the experts on that that you have conversations with. You've had conversations for years, and then get it said very quickly. And here's what I was going to say. Sorry, my mind goes all over the place. Mike had a speech impediment most of his life. Mike went to speech, specialist. Even while he was doing radio talk show host stuff, he went to a speech therapist and practiced how he articulated things. And then part of the practice was to say things rapidly, because he had a hard time getting stuff out in a coherent, rapid way. And so when you would listen to Mike on the radio, people have been around for a while that, the younger audience probably doesn't know this stuff, but Mike, when he did his show, he was very rapid. He was staccato. He said things very quickly. And it was really, think of anything Rush would say, or maybe even what I would say. He would say it 50% faster. You see people that they get tired of hearing you or I talk, trying to have a casual conversation, and they want to hit it at 50% speed forward because they just want to hear to get the information and get on the next thing, right? And I actually get that. So I'm not averse to that, but sometimes you need to process other thoughts and have time for your brain to do comparative analysis, cross-reference things. So Mike would go 50% faster. And he was very, very good at it because he was practiced. He wasn't just practicing to be an auctioneer. He was practicing with the subject matter. And so, like, I'd be there at the house, we'd have breakfast or something, be wherever we were at. And he'd have all of the news clippings. We didn't have the internet like that the way we do today. So he'd have gone through 10 papers he got up early in the morning, he'd grab all the papers. He had stuff that was delivered. There's newsstands down the street. He'd have them out there. He'd be cutting articles out and putting them on his desk. Other people, he'd get to the office before a radio show in the afternoon, and he'd have other notes and stuff that other people had put in there. And he'd have literally a book of stuff that he was going to talk about on the show that day that he'd put together. And stuff that he wanted to say, he'd have practiced how he was going to read that article, say a certain thing before he ever went on the air. It was not as easy, especially in the early years, as he made it sound. And when you listen to the show, you don't actually hear that he had a speech issue earlier in his life in the way that he would articulate things out. He got coached. He paid hard money, real money, to experts to work with him, listen to his shows, and then come back and critique him. You could have done this. You could have articulated it this way. You could have said it this way. He earned his place with a lot of hard work. It wasn't gifted to him or like that. He made his way in talk radio. And then when he started bringing on guests, he did something that others weren't really doing. He set a pace that other talk hosts then had to duplicate. And what he would do, Mike would bring on a guest, have him on for 15 or 20 minutes, might only be 10 minutes, might be a politician right between things going on in DC right at that time. And by the way, Mike would start, whereas Rush was a 3-hour show, most people don't know this, Mike did 4 hours every day live. And he started on the East Coast with the drive time on the East Coast as people were leaving work 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then it continued on to the West Coast. And some stations would only have him on for an hour. Some stations would have him on for 2 or 3 hours. Almost nobody had him on for all 4 hours. And what they would do then is they would repeat the first hour on the West Coast at the end of the show. And so you were hearing a recording in that last hour a lot of times that would end up being a 5th or even a 6th hour of the studio time, but it was Mike's first hour from the East Coast with live politicians and like. But Mike's thing was he would cover a subject very concisely. It would be wherever the politician or the businessman or the influencer had time to get in there. He'd get them in for a few minutes. They would say what they had to say. Now you had something that the listeners could talk about. And then they would take the callers. And unlike Rush, who was very, very, very heavy at screening anybody that got on, that's why he just had Ditto, because Snerdley and everybody else, unless you got somebody that was just exactly what Rush wanted to hear, you never got on the show. You could have new information, some different perspective. Rush didn't want it. It didn't fit exactly what he'd already said. You wouldn't get on there. Mike wasn't the same way. Almost anybody that called, unless you were just an asshole or an idiot, complete idiot, you never made it on the show then. But most of the callers could get in, and they might have a misunderstanding or they might have a difference of opinion. Mike could take it, and then he'd talk about it. He wasn't afraid to have dissenting opinions, contrary opinions like that. And it was something amazing that Mike did and could do that most other hosts were afraid of it because they didn't know the subject matter that well. They hadn't, sparred in that way. Mike was great at that and still keeping friends, even amongst the callers. He respected his audience, and if they had a difference of opinion, he'd let them say it as long as they were respectful. He'd give them why he disagreed. He'd give them their opinion, but he'd leave room for a conversation. You see what I'm saying? So that's part of the beauty Mike was, and then he covered so much more subject matter. For example, when we were dealing with the Whitewater stuff, I could bring in Larry Nichols. I could bring in Larry Patterson, who was Bill Clinton's personal security head of the detail there, Arkansas State Trooper, 30 years. I could bring in local bank people or former Rose Law Firm employees. I could bring in anybody I needed to add depth or detail to what was going on there, and Mike would make room. And you'd get, if the material was warranted, you might get 15 or 30 minutes. You might even get the whole hour if you needed to, in order to cover something. And I know from thousands of interactions, people would stop, pull their car over, wait in the parking lot, get the kids at soccer, and then sit in the parking lot for an extra minute or two when they got home or whatever to hear the end of the interview, because the interviews were so on point, compelling. It was so cutting, because you weren't hearing somebody pontificating about a news story. You were hearing the people that were the news story live, and it was completely different tenor and tone. And then in a show, in the course of a day, he wasn't just covering one subject or two subjects or something the president said, or 2 or 3 things. You'd get 6, 7, 8 different completely instantly compelling news stories. And if you were only in the car for that 20 minutes, you got something. I was with Justice Thomas on something, and we were conversing. And I mentioned, well, Mike had so-and-so on the show talking about this the other day. He says, oh, yeah, I heard it. And then he throws in this, I'm here, you're there. And I knew then he was a solid listener. Well, what's that referring to? Mike would have to go to San Diego, be down there all week to do the shows, and his wife's back home in Hollywood at their residence doing her work. And so they wouldn't see each other all week. He'd be gone for 4 nights. And it was painful because they're very, very, very close. They were, Jen and I think of them as the iconic couple that if I wanted to have my relationship mirror anybody in the world, for a closeness, ability to work together, just the relationship, it'd be Mike and Colleen. They were that kind of a couple that that's the people we want to be. And so being gone, 200 miles away, he couldn't commute, couldn't, even afford it at the time in the early days. And 150 miles away. But anyway, he'd say, I'm here, you're there. That was his little saying with Colleen. When they call on Tucker nights, he'd say that on the show from time to time. Well, I'm here, you're there, to callers. So when Justice Thomas says, I'm here, you're there, I knew instantly, yeah, he's not just, heard one interview.
Awesome.
He's listened to a lot. And he said it, because it was that time of day where you're driving in the car, you could turn on and you could hear, and Mike would have something any time you dialed in. Yeah, there was going to be in that hour something compelling that was just happening, and Mike could get him on the phone. Literally while the show's going, I'd send him a note. Hey, Mike, this just happened. So-and-so's available. Here it is right here. If you want to call him, he'd pick a phone, call a person. So I understand this is going on. Can you explain this to us? I got the audience here. That was Mike. It was why he was the number 2 talk show host in the world. At the same time, Rush was number 1 in the mornings. And then the other thing, just so people understand context, Rush was number 1 because his show was huge out of New York. What Mike was unique about, and Rush had shows all over the country and like that, but he had the main powerhouse stuff, especially in the East Coast out of New York. Flyover country, Mike was way stronger. And I don't think the audience numbers even fully reflected the weight that Mike had, because they weren't recording them the same way for dwell time and things like that. When you look at Mike's numbers and then where he was out across afternoon, flyover country, the number of people that were listening to Mike was absolutely stunning, and it was mainstream America. And he identified with people in that way very precisely. And unlike Rush, and I'm not dissing Rush in any way. Rush, America wouldn't be what it is today without Rush. We would not have the understanding in this broad audience. Everybody in this audience listening right now, probably in many, many ways is a product of the work that Rush did in those early years, and that paved the way for Mike to come in, because Mike was a few years after Rush. He was about 3 years after Rush. Rush created a political genre that was acceptable to get into local radio. And it started from New York. Mike tag teamed in, took on the afternoon side, where there was a lot of other hosts over there early evening and late evening, but you didn't have it during the commute. Mike created the afternoon commute. And then what happened locally at radio stations across the country is you had afternoon hosts that were before Reagan, after Rush in the Gap, that were talk hosts, or after Reagan, that would then take certain subject matter and go much deeper. So Mike would do 15 minutes. They'd get the same guest on and do an hour or 2 hours and just dissect it. Mike left enough meat on the bone that there was still stuff for the local hosts. So what Mike did was program prep for other shows around the country. And I would argue even within this audience here, you have a lot of other hosts that are great hosts. They have a more concise audience. And they listen to stuff that you do with the Titans, your own stuff here, and then they take that and they go deeper. So you're like giving them the main stuff, a lot of great guests and information like that, then they take that and they go further with it. They're not just repeating what you've said, they're taking what you've provided and going deeper with their specific smaller audience. That's what Mike did. He got certain subject matter out there, got people to understand the basics of it, and then the local host still had something to work with. There was still meat on the bone that with the local audience they could go deeper. They'd pick up the phone, we'd talk 15, 20 minutes, something going on, for example, in Arkansas. And then they'd come back and they'd get somebody like a Larry Nichols or any other on there, and they'd go, 5, 6, 7 times further and deeper at a local level, and it allowed them room to be the big dog in their own home turf. And so there was a tag team there. Is that you kind of getting the drift of what I'm saying here, how that fit?
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a good dude. I think I had him on the screen right here. Michael Reagan, devoted guardian of the Reagan legacy, says that he entered eternity this week at the age of 80. It's nice that CBN News did a little 2-minute blurb on him. Gary Lane pays tribute to him and recalls some of the off-camera conversations. He's much more than a president's son. He was a compassionate conservative, a champion for family values, and a true friend to our veterans.
Well, and let me just add this with Mike. From a family side, and grandson, President Reagan's grandson, Mike's son, Cameron, were very, very close. Ashley, his daughter. By the way, poor Cameron. A bunch of the news stuff, you wonder how much of this was actually intentional, just as a rib. A bunch of the news stuff, it got out there through, who knows where exactly. I kind of think I know, but I won't say it exactly. That Michael Reagan and his 2 daughters. So Mike has his son Cameron, daughter Ashley. All over, if you go look, there's all sorts of articles talking about how Mike was a great father and their 2 daughters, survive him and all this stuff. What in the world are they talking about? They don't even know enough in their information to get it right. Because a daughter has done it couldn't be clearer. Go on the Wikipedia, go on his homepage, and else. But anyway, Mike was, in all the years that I know him, and especially as we got into after his dad left office, Mike had a practice that he wouldn't do any events or do any speaking or even want to talk politics Saturday or Sunday. That was off limits. And in fact, Friday night was marginal. And so if you called to talk about politics, you might get hung up on. And you just knew that it was off limits. That's family. And I could name lots of situations where it might come up in a passing little thing here, but he'd turn around and say, yeah, I'll talk about that Monday. Okay. Call me Monday. Let's talk about it. And he wanted to talk about church, very devoted Catholic. He wanted to talk about football, but he did not want to talk about politics on the weekend. He wanted to talk about golf game, things like that. And especially around the family who had to deal with the rest of the week. And of course, when your dad is president, when your dad was governor, yeah, it's politics, it's politics, it's politics, it's politics. You go to a barbecue, you go golfing, all they want to talk is politics. And so he had to put that line in the sand very hard. But you know what? His kids and his grandkids understood there was a line where he made family more important. And that really made a huge deal. And at the time for me, look, I'm 24/7 because I don't have an option, is my opinion. And even during all those years, it just wasn't an option for me. Yet I understood it. It was nice. We'd do something. And I knew if I was in the weekend or an evening, unless there was something like, say, Oklahoma City, we were both on the deck of a boat off the coast of Hawaii when Oklahoma City happened. And, into that weekend, even then, we had things that we were dealing with. Because I got General Parton on over at the Air Force with the BDA team's bomb damage assessment stuff. We had him on the phone literally 15 minutes after we saw the first reports as it happened. And, getting kind of a first gut thing. And then General Parton said what he said, it was clear that it wasn't just the truck, even in the first hours. Mike and I were together a number of times when that kind of event happened. We just happened to have things happen when we were together. But with the exception of something, that compelling, he was very careful to protect his family from thinking that all these other things were more important than just being dad, just being grandpa, and kind of turning it off, having an off switch at different times. And, I had a lot of respect for that. And it is something that even myself, I do have to, I may not do it just on the weekend, but I have certain windows where I'll say, okay, I just got to think about cars. I want to think about boats. I want to, savor the environment, walk the mine or something and just enjoy looking at rocks, something different than just politics 24/7, because you'll get broken, twisted if you stay in that lane and you never do anything else or allow your mind to go other places. So anyway,
it's a tough thing to get into, and it sounds like he was absolutely a great guy. And
he was, yeah.
Dude, I remember too, like before or after filming my first video to ever put it on YouTube, I think I sat there for maybe like an hour and a half, like, am I gonna upload it? Who wants to hear from me? And it's it's a tough proposition to get into, for sure.
Well, a lot of people don't know this, Mike. What happened was they wanted to get him a show. This is just a fun little detail. I hope people are enjoying this, and it's not, but this history. So Mike gets an offer from a group that wants to syndicate, which means sell the show to other news outlets around the country, radio outlets. An investment group will have 5 or 10 radio stations that they own in different markets. And then they get shows to fill the slots within that group, and it might be rock and roll in the morning and news radio in the afternoon or overnight, and they get, they'll bring on an Art Bell, they'll bring on other hosts to cover certain slots, and some of it's local, and they'll have their own local anchors that give local news like that. So these affiliate groups can buy a show, and then they get advertising. The incentive for a syndicate like that is that if they have shows, they then sell advertising, throughout the show and make money. That's the whole point of owning a radio syndicate or a radio station. There's revenue sharing that would happen with whoever was syndicating their show. So this group offered Mike a job as a radio host, but they didn't have any outlets for the show yet. So literally Mike has no live anybody in the country listening to his show. He starts in the studio. He has a program manager. He's got a studio guy, and he's doing a radio show to nobody. And so in the early days, literally they tweak the audio a little bit, and one of the program people would act like a caller calling in, asking a question or making a statement and asking Mike's opinion, and then Mike would answer on it as though it was a real caller from wherever, because they had to do the show while they were trying to do the marketing to sell the show and show that it was worthwhile. So Mike literally for weeks is doing his show, and then they get one station, the ones carry him for 1 hour. So he's got live 1 hour, and then the rest of it they're making up to cover the 4 hours as they build the show out. And that went on literally for the better part of his first year. And so the people doing this were doing it on a shoestring. They offered that they had plenty of money to do everything. At the end of the day, they were struggling, and we kind of knew that, right? So payday comes up, and they don't have enough for payroll early on. And so they offered Mike, this is a true story, they offered Mike baseball caps, and he could sell the baseball caps and make money to pay his bills during the radio show. He's like, I got to pay gas. I got a mortgage. My wife, we had an understanding. Things are tight right now. So they're going to pay him in baseball caps. Okay. Within the audience, you think, oh, yeah, he's Reagan's son and he's got all this. Mike was struggling during a lot of those years. He fought his way through to be viable. The wife had to do some work and paid the bills too, and he's got a family and kids. He had some rough stuff in there. He fought. He earned his place and his legacy. And how many people here in the audience? Yeah, I'm going to pay in baseball caps this week. It's not silver bars; it's baseball caps, but it's got a name on it, and you could sell that name. Oh shit! And he came all the way out through that. He did great in the end, but he let's put it this way. He bet on himself. He believed that he had something worthwhile to offer and could make a difference, and that he could, cover the bills. And he did something amazing. And the country, just like I said, Rush, the country would not be the same had not Rush come on the line the way he did. And it was changes in the rules for how radio worked at the time. There was certain broadcasting things that you couldn't really have a Rush during the Reagan years, and they changed the rules and allowed that a Rush could happen with just a single opinion. You had to have, if you gave any opinion on the radio, you had to have the counter opinion and make it available equal time and all that stuff, and that changed at the end of Reagan. And so that opened the door. Rush busted the door open, and then Reagan took the baton in the afternoons and did what he did. And to me, personally, if you get right down to it, within this exact audience, the way we do the podcast today, the way you hosts are in there, you're more of a result of Reagan than you are of Rush. The way that you're able to function, the way this community functions, is a legacy of Reagan's way of operating, not Rush's way. Where it was just one person pontificating and then ditto. And that's not to take anything away from Rush. Love Rush. We wouldn't be here. But this community You are a direct result of what Reagan did, his style, the techniques that he employed. We picked up, and you'll notice you really don't have talk radio today like it existed for the older folks in the audience here, the way it existed from, say, the early 90s until about 2007, 8, 9, 10, where that really started to go away and fade out. It's morphed. We don't listen to media in the same way as we did then. So it was a moment in time. And in fact, I was doing a premiere, a preview of Sound of Freedom in Las Vegas. And we had a bunch of influencers there. We had in the audience, I invited people, and it was just, we only had 3 days notice, and people came from all over the world with Jim Caviezel and like that. We showed Sound of Freedom there in Vegas. The day that we showed it was the day that Rush passed away. And I told the audience there we had the XD theaters there, and it was fantastic. I think they sat about 500, and we did several screenings over a couple of days. And I said, because most of them were influencers, most of them were people doing their own shows like that I'd invited in. I said, you're receiving the baton from Rush. It's like there was some symbology to that, to carry these issues forward. And I think that's truly the case, that the audience that you have here, including other hosts that will hear shows like this that you do, they're the ones that are the real influencers at a more granular, grassroots kind of a level. People tend to have a host they like, it's a Nino, it's a 50 other names that I could name. I just do a lot of shows with Nino, so it's representative in a way. But that, shows like Jerry Foley with a very religious tone, other shows that may be more local to a particular state or something. That granularity is the mark of today. You couldn't do Reagan's show today and probably be that successful except in major markets. Even shows like what Bongino has or Hannity and like that, it's because they're in New York and it's a very concise market. It doesn't work across the rest of the country the way that it did with Rush and with Reagan. And I would contend it's not effective even in those markets the way it was then, where you could have affect the whole course of the country to the effect that you have an honorary Rush and Reagan honorary members of the 94th Congress, because they changed the tone of the country so much that they were credited as having, been a significant role in winning the midterms. And the reason that I don't think they're as effective is because you have Mandami in New York. If a Hannity, if a Bongino or similar was as effective as they were back in the Reagan-Rush era, you would never have gotten those people into office, in my opinion, even with crooked elections.
I'm over here yelling at the friggin' muted mic. You know what else? You know what else too is all the radio stations that I hear. Whenever I would listen to, the radio going to work. Generally, I would listen to sports talk. The Patriots and stuff like that, right? But all of them around here, whenever I listen to all the narratives that they put out, are completely leftist, and it's obvious that they're being funded by the left side. And it's like, yeah, make sure you go take your vaccine for COVID. And I'm like, oh God, no. Oh, we got to support, we got to support our neighbors and these horrible ICE people. And I'm just like, oh, yeah, and it is not what it was. And I was in the same boat as you, not in the same boat as you, but I was very much devouring a lot of, podcasts back then, Art Bell, and then we get into George Norrie and some of, I remember even listening to a familiar name to some still is Project Camelot back in the day. And until that was some fun. Her and that dude Bill, the Australian guy. I mean, so I had no idea, Juan, why years ago I was like voraciously consuming air quotes conspiracy, topics, but I think I've later on come
Well,
to
let me
realize.
add this. Let me just add this. People, look, I like to collect cars, and cars from different eras. There's themes that go with them. The 40s cars, the 50s cars, and so I think of that environment and how people thought. The post-war cars. I'm having some work done on one of my cars. I have an extremely rare one of cars, the only one that was built, prototype out of Chrysler, and it's from the 50s. And they're doing work on it right now. I'm kind of enjoying the stuff that they're doing, but I think of what was going on in people's minds, and the community, the guy that would have bought a car like that or dreamed of buying it, but bought the regular model. Okay. What wins on Sunday sells on Monday type of a mentality. And so here, this prototype is the dream, but 99.999% of the people, they're buying the dream. And I have the counterpart. So this particular car was the top of the line for Chrysler. It was done as a one only convertible in this model. Every option on it, for a couple of car shows from the factory. And then I have the one that actually everybody bought, the 4-door car, not even the 2-door, it's the 4-door. And it's got every option in there, but it would have been Dad, the businessman, because he's got kids, he's got the wife. You can't have the 2-door convertible and get kids in out before you even had car seats and all that. It just wouldn't work. And so a practical dad, even if he's fairly successful and wants something cool, he still had to have the 4-door and, things like that, carry other people around, business like that. So you get to see the dream, but then you also see, but this is what Dad bought when he got to the showroom. Because the wife wasn't going to let him, you don't need the convertible. You need a car that we can, use for other practical purposes. And it's fun to just see the two like that. When you think of eras, the car in the 50s didn't really work in the 60s. People, the young people coming in that were buying their first car, they didn't want to be dad with the family car. That was just a different world, really, if you get right down to it. And so now I think about what we're doing within the conservative stuff, the stuff that worked in the 90s, early 2000s, Oklahoma City, Whitewater, the New York attacks and things like that. That stuff was a particular era, but it wasn't, we're not in the same era right now. And the way we reach audiences, the way they want to hear us isn't the same. And I would even go into, for example, Art Bell. Today, Art Bell would not be able to do what he did any more than Reagan or Rush could do what they did. That was a moment in time. Art fit that moment because we didn't have the internet yet. And so you only had certain broadcasters you could go to. And then the late night stuff, East Coast to West Coast, it just fit. And he had the right personality. So, for example, when Art first left, he had a host that replaced him who was a good friend and a great host. But Art was, because he was a smoker, he had this a little more gravelly voice. And it was a very soothing type of a voice. And it worked his pace in the middle of the night. He's there in the studio all by himself, which was never happened in radio. He could run the whole studio all by himself. He usually had a team of people there, at least 2 other people to do a show. And they're in your ear and they're distracting. And so it changes the way you pace yourself and present, because you're actually presenting to an audience on the other side of the mirror, or the other side of the glass, and they're dealing with callers and all that. Art was a one-man band. He would do the show. He didn't screen calls. It was the next person that called in, and he pushed the button, and if they were on the line, they were on. And it was people calling and calling and calling and calling, hoping, and then they get on the phone and be ringing and ringing and ringing, and he might have 4 lines available, and he'd pick line 3, and you were on. But he didn't have anybody, so his mind was working differently in the way he interacted with callers, the way he ran the studio. And then he did long segments, whereas you'd have a break at the quarter hour for a Reagan, because they had to do the commercials, rush the same way. You didn't go, huge long stretches without doing it. Art would do a half hour and then a bottom of the hour break, and it'd be a long break to get all the commercials in, then a top of the hour break with a little bit of news from the affiliate, and then a couple of commercials, and they'd be on. So you'd get huge long things. Think of the subject matter that Art would cover. You'd get into the thoughts, you'd hear the presentation, you'd have time to really be absorbing everything. When he got to the bottom of the hour break, which was a hard break, he could lead you in, okay, you know what? Let's take a break for a moment. We'll be back in a couple minutes, and we'll pick this up right here. And then he'd go into his commercial. He'd hand it off to the affiliate. When he came back in, you had these long stretches that you could actually absorb the whole subject matter without interruption. And it was fantastic. We can do that in the stuff today, but it's not the same because you have so many things calling on you. The difference is with the way we do the presentations today, your listeners can pause. They can stop because somebody showed up. There's a phone call coming. They can pause and pick back up. You don't get the same kind of absorption. And in the middle of the night, we tend to listen to stuff all through the day. With Art, you were getting ready to go to sleep. You have the lights down. All the other distractions are gone. People aren't calling you on your phone at 11 or 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning. So you didn't tend to get interrupted. You would absorb stuff that Art had on because you're in that twilight zone. The shows that we have today, the people that are calling in, that are listening, they're the things that are pulling their mind away don't allow for those long things. So you end up, everybody thinks the stuff that does good are the 3-minute bites, and you get a taste of it, and then you're on to the next thing. Even something like a Camelot project and all that, which, especially in the early years, I had a lot of respect for unusual subject matter. There's some struggles there that today love everybody involved, but it's not meshing the way that it did before. Hard, unusual subjects. Art dealt with stuff that, who would ever have thought of rods? Now I'm talking people that heard, what is a rod? But when you hear what they have to say and they give the whole thing, pretty compelling on a lot of levels, all sorts of subject matter that people, Mel's whole, a real thing. And then all the mischief that went around it, and then some things going off point later on. It was very compelling. But I don't think you can do the same thing today. It's just a different environment. So we have to I'll tell you what's going to be the most compelling in the near future. And it'll be all news 24/7 for a while. In fact, people will get overdosed on, be like turkey at Thanksgiving, and then, turkey sandwiches, and then turkey soup, and the bone soup, etc. You get, okay, I'm turkeyed out for a while. And that's going to be the Gitmo stuff when we get to that phase of this. And it'll just be like, 9/11 every day within the latest pieces of news and like that. And we'll have to pace ourselves as a community. That we also cover other stuff because the world's going to go on, but it'll be that compelling when we finally get there. So anyway.
Oh yeah, and we're headed there. Well, the one last thing I wanted to ask and just touch on, and then I wanted to ask you a little bit about the silver stuff because
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
going crazy. Which is all right. You talked about it before, and you mentioned there's some black pillars out there for sure, and I 100% agree. And so Dan Bongino posts this of President Trump flipping up the middle finger, and he puts the vibe of the show when I relaunch on February 2nd. And then you have some of these black pillars like, oh, yeah, Dan didn't do nothing and rah, 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 rah. And so he posts out this, it's been a busy year with all these different indictments and whatnot. I think personally, I think Dan did a hell of a job as he was a podcaster. And then he went into this position, by all appearances, like, hey, I'm going to go do what I got to do here. And I think he already planned on only being a year or whatever. And then so when he leaves, people are like, oh, you already quit or whatever. And I'm like, well, I thought he was already going to leave. And then he hasn't come back to his podcast yet, which is on the 2nd. And we haven't even heard from him or what he's going to say about the administration. Like, oh, I tried my best, but I was just getting stonewalled at every turn. That place is an absolute mess and nothing else can fix it. Maybe, there's no other way other than the military or something like that, So I didn't know if you had any kind of comment on that at all. Because Dan hasn't commented yet, and we don't know, what his mindset is on that stuff. And I think it's unfair to black pill on him right now.
Well, let me just say this. Dan did come out and say something literally the next day. And he did essentially an open statement to President Trump. Mr. President, you're in danger. Your security details, the Secret Service, are not doing their job. And you're at instant risk. And the people coming after you, they're not like this kid out at Butler. They're not the riffraff. These are world-class professionals, and they're gunning for you. And, as President of the United States, you have a responsibility to the people to survive, the people that elected you here. You have got to up your game. You've got to force that the people around you up their game. You're at instant risk. After he said that, he shut up. Either you get it or you don't. His concern is that this whole thing, everything that's occurred to this moment in time could be completely shut down. If Trump goes, nothing else, we're done. Who else would advocate for the country the way Trump has? Who would be in a position to do that and bring the people along with them? As much as there's this contention like Trump is somehow, there's not support for him and people are fading or whatever. That's not true. He has more support than ever if you get right down to it. And it's moving forward. You may have some people that became, kind of lost their way, became more verbal. His support's pretty solid. You don't have Trump there, though. The entire global direction of things changes. And I will say this, without getting too precise, I'm very concerned because we have something going on right now that is an instant threat to the president, very, very serious. And to get action on that has been almost non-existent. And you're like, seriously, with this level knowledge of the even the precision of the threat from the group involved, and we just can't get there. I have to actually mimic with what Bongino's saying. What the hell is going on here? Seriously. And I'm very concerned about that. But that said, I know that the president's more aware of some of this than he even lets on to because of other things going on in the background. It's just that if anything was to happen to him, God forbid, our situation as a country would be radically different.
Big time. And you even have interesting. You remember you have this guy Clay Higgins. I believe it's Clay Higgins. Yeah, and he was one of the guys that was kind of outing the he was the one that was outing like the people on January 6th that were bringing in the Antifa or whatever to January 6th and stuff, and so he was very kind of jerked off about that. But even him putting out videos like, "All right, Patriots, don't worry, we're gonna be all right," and stuff like that. So I feel like there's more going on behind the scenes that people are just not aware of, that some of these people do know. But Juan, the real important thing is, are you still selling silver? Because guess what? Our treasury is not. And dude, you know what? Wait, before you answer that, I got to show you the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. We were doing the Table of Titans last night, and we often just chat afterwards, and I don't know how I came across it. I was just scrolling on Twitter. You ever seen a cat that is like overdosed on catnip or something? But so this is the funny segment, guys.
Oh man.
I'm not even playing. She's talking in Spanish, but look at the cat. The cat is absolutely gonzo. And in a second, you're going to see it doing the pirate face. It's got like one eye shut and one eye open. And it's just like, look at this thing. It's like, I've never seen a cat or an animal that's just that out of it like that. It's just like, yeah, I'm cool, dude. I'm cool. So yeah, we even covered on the Table of Titans last night that it's basically the Treasury or whatever is stopping selling numismatic or what do they call them, like coins and things along those natures. So basically, they're not selling their silver stuff anymore. Are you putting your stuff on hold? Because dude, this market is just being absolutely bananas, up, down, left, and right.
Well, the main thing, when I first offered the first coin back in fall of 2023, and we had to prep for that. It was several months getting the dies made, getting, they're approved quality coins, so you have to get stuff done well before it ever gets to actually minting, and so there was a process there. And the day that we offered the coin was the low day on silver price margin forward, which I had anticipated somewhat, but happened to hit it exactly. And from that point forward, it's continued to march up. And, because I have a lot of history I don't get into on the silver stuff. By the way, on the atomic table, what's silver? It's 107.
Is it really?
Yes, I'm like, wait, 107, 848, whatever, 868. Anyway, kind of fun. But because I had other history dealing with silver all the way back into the early 80s. And so I called it, pretty precisely. I called the close of the silver window, over a decade earlier, a couple months in advance, and people are like, no way, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard in my whole life. Well, I nailed it. And even all the experts, well, that'll never happen because they've had the silver window for hundreds of years there, and they're not going to shut it down. Well, they shut it down. I know they're shutting it down on purpose because they wanted to flood the market with paper silver promises. And so when that happened, it made it appear that we had more silver available than we did, and that kept the price of silver down. And so now the payback on that is that we're going to go to physical silver, including we need it. Hey, let me tell you what, this is almost lost. I just had this conversation with an expert yesterday, and it's this. What is the hidden factor in the U.S. market specifically that is affecting the price of silver here inside the country? We aren't really producing silver in our mining here. It's a byproduct of other mining where it does come up here in the U.S. market. We have lots of silver. Look, I'm in the silver state here in Nevada, the silver state, but nobody's really mining silver precisely because the value of mining it was not there. It was just not enough value, so it's a byproduct. We can turn it back on, but what's the cost to get a mine up and running and focused on silver and stuff like that? It's a very specific type of mining, and there's a lot involved. So they aren't doing it. But here in America, when Trump is putting up tariffs all over the world and then convincing companies to come back to America and do their manufacturing here. Silver is an industrial metal. If you want to make computer chips, if you want to create a server farm, if you want to do solar, all these other things, there's really nothing that replaces silver within the electronics community. You could use platinum, you could use gold, you could use other stuff. It's so much more expensive. Silver is relatively low cost and an extremely efficient, effective transmitter of electrons, electrical power for these, communication systems, et cetera. So when Trump returns manufacturing to America, especially of these high-tech items, the demand locally here in the country for businesses that use silver for industrial purposes is going to go up radically. And you say, well, it's just a tiny amount on these servers. Yeah, but you're building millions.
And it's everything, dude. It's medical equipment, the chips, solar panel. I mean, it's everywhere. I mean,
it's everything. Yes.
And just really quick one. Hulk kind of pulled up a story that I touched on like a week ago, last night during the show, and they were talking about the banks and how essentially the yield that we pull out of the earth every year is roughly 800 million ounces. But the story was basically saying that they were $4.4 billion in the rears as far as ounces, which they got basically community noted. And the community note said, well, no, that's not actually correct. They're only like $1.4 billion in behind, and billion ounces behind. And I'm like, well, that's still a big problem. So there is a big issue as far as the physical versus the paper. And we know every time historically what had happened was they would just say, oh, well, we're getting scarce on physical. Well, we just, air quotes, delivered, some silver, but it was just paper. And I feel like that's harder to do nowadays going forward.
Well, it is, because the industrial demand is the industrial demand. You can't fake that. And as it gets rarer, harder to get, these assembly lines cannot, just pause waiting for the silver. The cost is absolutely, if you're selling a chip and the chip maybe sells for $10, $20, $100 a chip, the amount of silver by weight that goes in there is, fractions of $1, $1, $2. You can't hold up the whole process for that, and you're building, massive quantity. It just shuts you down, or any other type of an operation. I had to have a brake controller, computer brake controller for my Jag here a while back, and it had, what failed on it was that the connections, which were silver, wasn't quite solid in one place. And so literally this $1,500 controller, the guy breaks it open, saws it open, gets in there, and he just puts silver coating on this contact on either side, and it was just fractions of a cent. He charges like $300 to do what he did, but it was just one little connection that wasn't quite as well coated as it needed to be, and that was all it did. The whole thing was junk, a paperweight. They were going to sell me a new one from the factory for $1,500. Says that's not what the problem is. It's this one connection. It's just I have to break the seal, open the thing up. I actually have to cut it open with a saw, and then reseal it correctly. But if you're good with that and you don't care about it being factory perfect, pristine, I can save you a lot of money. You did it and it worked, just fine. It's worked perfect ever since. It was just one little silver connection, but it's that critical that it have enough coating on it. And for whatever reason from the factory, it didn't quite have enough. The key thing is this. I talked with mining people that have pretty good connections in that realm. They're not going to turn on the mining before silver reaches about 240, and the reason is that the and I expect silver, their expectations goes up to about 280 to 300 within the way they're projecting it, but they won't even try to turn things on until it's about 240. And their logic is this: they're not sure that Trump is going to be around that long, and with the threats and things like that. But more importantly, who replaces Trump? If these tariffs go away, then the silver will start coming in from other places around the world without the tariff on it. They think the tariffs would go away. And when that happens, all of a sudden they're competing with, cheap labor and poor mine practices and targeted stuff, exactly what took the silver industry out in America over the last several decades. So this window of protection that allows American business to reestablish, including in the mining industry, could go away. Right now with the tariffs, what they're forcing is an honest wage and businessmen to be able to get, enough value to make it worthwhile to go after silver, while you're competing with, people around the world that are getting paid nothing to go do the mining at slave labor rates. And so to put a mine together, to start from scratch for a silver mine, it's about a 10-year process, permits and equipment and personnel and everything else. If you have an existing mine, that can be down, in a perfect world, real number, about 3 years to 5 years. I've heard 2 years, but you get into the details with the guys and it's just not happening. It's several year projects. So you go make a huge investment to get your mine up and working again, get investors and everybody in place. If Trump or similar is not there in 3 years, they could change the rules again, and you've just lost everything you did. You got all your investors pissed off at you, et cetera. So again, and then things with the demand rarely go just to the price that is the cost of extraction and overhead and investment to return dates and like that. So it'll go past that 240 mark, and the estimate, the real number is probably somewhere around 280. It may spike over 300 something and then roll back. The other side of the coin is from the current demand side. On the electronic side, what's the pain point where the manufacturers just pay the tariffs, get it from other places, go through the house or anything else? It's also somewhere around 240. And by the time you have extra pressure and there's a time and everybody's competing for it, again, you're probably up there around 280 to 300. So that's probably a real number. I hear, the stuff, it's going to thousands and all that. Well, that's based on the dollar collapsing. And it's not the Treasury dollar, it's the Federal Reserve dollar. And of course, we're going to a Treasury dollar, not a Federal Reserve dollar. That's this huge fight that's happening elsewise. So anyway, and that's a conversation maybe for another day to get into the minutia of that. The short version is there's a long ways for silver to go, even from where it's at right now. And so I don't think that anybody buying right now will regret that a year from now. And what's the timeline for it to hit those numbers? Well, industry hasn't turned back on in America quite yet. It's coming. The industrial users of silver are anticipating that, but they're not there yet. So we're just in the early stages of turning on. When the actual physical demand due to increased production beyond what's already here right now in a thin market, when that really comes on hard and fast, probably realistically is a year to 18 months from now, and then it's a straight line up from the actual use of silver. The industries needing it will anticipate that and are anticipating it now. So I think that we see a steady climb of silver. 90 is not where this stops. And as much as it's moved up steadily, look, when I first came out, we had silver down there to 15, 16, 17 dollars. People thought that was it. I said, no, we're going a long ways. We're now, solidly 4.5 times past that price. And we're just getting started as far as I'm concerned. It has a long ways to go. So.
And yeah, Juan, so check this out too. So I kind of hunted this down and checked AI, and they said, oh well, there's YouTube videos going around, and all right. So I looked at a subreddit, and the subreddit mentioned Michael Widmer, who is the I guess he's the head of the metals at Bank of America, head of metals research at Bank of America. Sees significant silver price potential in 2026, suggesting silver could peak between 135 and 309 per ounce, driven by a potential reversion of the gold to silver ratio towards historical lows. Strong retail investor demands as a safe haven and gold's primary role as a hedge, while Bank of America has also suggested a $65 forecast. The extreme upside potential comes from the ratio compressing, which would require massive surge in silver prices, which I think just the scarcity alone, right? Like we know for sure. Like I don't think they don't have the silver that they say they do on paper. And it's not even close. And we know that they're well behind. So the only way for the price of that stuff is to go is up. And what I was showing as you were talking, Juan, was, as I like to do here, because when I was recommending people purchase silver was in beginning, I want to say, of 2019, and it went from like 14, 17, 18, 17, but it was roughly in the 17 ballpark. So you're doing all right if you listened to me in 2019, because you're at $89 an ounce now, and I can't believe that, dude. And what they're saying also is the price of $89 silver here might be 100, 105 in Shanghai and UAE, might even be more over there in US
Well,
dollars.
let me just add this. So I have Canadian silver coin, Maple Leaf Champ, and a significant amount of them. Those are trading up in Canada right now. I had live trades earlier today. Somebody was sending me, wanted to know if I wanted to sell, and they were at 118, I think it was. And by the way, just for Jen and my coins, they're within themes like that. Those are proof quality coins. What happened at the mint was the proof quality double eagles that the mint sells. That's the same processes that we use, and we have oldest mint in the country doing our stuff, and the same processes is done for that. We are actually have been under what the U.S. mint is by $1 or $2 all the way along. Plus, you have to pay for shipping with them. We pay for our shipping on our stuff, so we're pretty competitive. But it's proof quality. You can't go by the spot price and say, "Well, why is your coin way more than that?" Well, by the way, when you're buying U.S. coinage, it's not 999 pure silver, because it has some metals in it for strength, even on the double eagles and like that. So, but and for U.S. coinage, like if you're buying bag silver and like that, it's less than 100% silver. Anyway, we're pretty competitive because it's a proof quality. The prep that goes into it, because it's actually an art piece, establishes a higher value. Nobody that's bought silver with what Jen and I've had has lost a penny. They've all made money steadily from day one, and I think that'll continue to be the case all the way along, because it is they're within a theme. It's a moment in time. They'll be very popular, and we don't print that much, so it's kind of a fun specialized market. And if you're looking for the very best value in silver, just go get bag silver U.S. coinage. You'll pay a premium right now because it's a hot market. Don't expect to get it anywhere close to spot price. So anyway.
Oh yeah, and so I have Juan's all. Let me pull this a little closer here, because I was listening the whole time, but I was running to my cabinet here to show people what a regular proof looks like here, because I have a. Because I was doing stuff with a company a couple of years ago, and they sent me a couple of proofs, and one of them's a 3 ounce, the other one's a regular one. But just to kind of show people, excuse me, what the difference is. Picture good? It's probably okay. So basically, when he talks about proof, guys, like the average coin that you get, it's not very shiny. These are like mirrors, right?
Yep.
As far as I understand.
Yep.
And I got not such a great picture, but we'll get it. Had to Here we go. So, a couple of these. I don't own. Believe me, I wish I owned more than I did. I wish I had more money to buy extra stuff, but collection. So that's basically what it is. It's like
Yeah.
yeah. This one on the right is the 3 ounce. It's really thick, and this one is this, but this is like a mirror, and this is a mirror as well. So that would be what he's talking about as far as proof quality, not just your average coin. So this is actually a 2011 American Eagle. I don't even know.
Well, and there's a lot of prep that goes into having that. They actually literally take the coin, polish it before it's ever minted. Costs quite a bit, and then the percentage of them that even after they're struck have to be tossed and remelted is actually higher than you would think. It's so there's a lot to it, and then we have some of our coins that we've done. I didn't want to do it early on. I was like, didn't want to do it colorizing part of the coin, but it's grown on me. We did the Megadors. We have the Watch the Water one, which has Melania on it, which are colorized on one side, and people really enjoy them. And it's the same coin. It helps to bring out some features of it like that. And I've actually grown pretty fond of them. So, and it's still pure silver. The one thing that's unique with what we have is that I think that they'll become touchstones over time. With the kids and the grandkids and like that. This is a moment in history, and it's kind of fun to tell the story. Our 2026 coin is the Called, which is the art that Jen put together for our movie, The Called, The Makings of a Perfect Day. And so that's on the reverse of the coin, and it's just a very fun theme and like that. And so that's what we have over there, plus some of the Watch Waters left over from last year. The 2025 coins, those will be gone shortly. And so
get them before they go up another friggin' $20-$40, because
well, they've gone up a lot. Even we sold out of pretty much everything. We have a few that we've held back, and they go for premium. But actually, it sounds like we're kind of kidding about that, but the reality is, look, who would have thought silver at 90? It was up at 95 the other day. So
I know you were saying at least months ago, in 2025, I remember you were saying, was it 60 or 70? You were saying like at least 60 or 70.
What I said was that by the end of the year, we'd see silver. It was going to be fighting. In the fall, it was fighting at 40, and then it popped through that. And I said, it's not 50, it's 60 that will be the next hold point, and it was. Then I said it was going to be up there at 90, and that's exactly where it's at. The next one is about just under 90, right where it's at, this 88 to 92 kind of range. The next spot is 120, and I think that's coming faster than people may think. But that is what you do, is you have kind of a stair step thing, and everybody takes their breath, and then they race on ahead again. And again, if you're talking to the industry people, the pain point from the industrial application side is up there around 300, and then they're just like, oh gosh, we have to rethink all of our pricing and everything. Below that, it's incidental enough, as expensive as it is. It's fairly workable at current pricing numbers for most of the companies. It's from a mining side, you're going to go make a huge investment to make a mine operate, and you think that just because it's $90 an ounce, that's enough to justify putting tens or hundreds of millions of dollars into a mine just focused only on silver and all the permits and the personnel and the capital investment and everything else. No, they're saying the number is 240 at current levels. And so the price of silver, even once they get to production, takes time to spool up in the production, easily shoots right past that number and stabilizes. It may go 320, 340, and then stabilize down there, we think, on the low side at about 280. And then you're looking at the stuff with some of the experts in the mining from the government side, and they're trying to be conservative, and they're telling you 305 to 320. You're right in the range with what I just told you. And I said that before those reports came out, because I'm talking to the industry insiders too on both sides. And I think that's probably a pretty real number. So again, silver at these numbers, whether you're just buying bag silver and just getting US coin like that, just go get it. If you want to get some collector stuff like we have, I think we have great buys, and I think they'll have value out in the future beyond just the pure silver price. It's a moment in history, and it won't come back. You can look at it slightly differently. Did the silver really go up in value that much, or did the value of the dollars you're buying it with go down? If you go to a treasury, if you go to a treasury silver-backed certificate like what Kennedy had, if silver goes up, so do the dollars that you're trading it with, the silver-backed certificates. The Federal Reserve note's the only thing that's in danger. So if you have treasury certificates, not notes, treasury certificates that are backed by silver, they're going to move with the value of silver. They're going to stay stable. They're not going to apparently move at all. They're going to be worth the same thing a year from now as they're worth right now, because they're tied to silver. An ounce of silver. It's the Federal Reserve notes that are going to go down and down and down. So if you're a company, see, this is what, I'm not going to get too deep in it because I've got to run to an appointment that I got people waiting for me on. But the difference is where we're going as a country. What Trump is intending to do is to pick up the baton where Kennedy left off. He was going to silver and gold backed money. That's why he had a silver certificate. That's why days after he was assassinated, Johnson nullified that and called in all the silver certificates and neutralized that forever. In his opinion, of the people running him. Remember, he was just somebody's puppet. When Trump goes to silver and gold certificates out of Treasury that are tied to pallets of gold or silver, that you can go in and exchange your gold or silver certificate for actual coin at the Treasury, then the value of those certificates is going to be very stable. Why did they turn off the sales of silver the other day? Because they were in reverse on the value of what they were selling the silver for. You're going to have everybody in the world. I go buy the silver at those numbers. Right. Give me a break, because they couldn't change it fast enough to go with the flow, and they weren't printing enough. They don't. The Treasury doesn't have enough silver prepped to do those coins. And at the end of the day, what they were selling as far as coins wasn't circulation stuff; it was the proof stuff. So they just couldn't be competitive. We're going to have to go in there and kick some ass on this stuff. Believe you me, it's coming. So, and you just saw it when they shut it off. So I still got it. They don't. Come over, buy some. That'd be fine. But or get it wherever else. We have what we have. But I'm just telling you generically, you're probably pretty safe having silver. I prefer coin over bars or ingots and things like that for a lot of reasons. The testing and the other stuff that goes on is just kind of a racket. You're better off with the coins. So just so you know.
Yeah, get the small ones. And his links are in the description box. And Juan, I will ask you, and I know you got to get going, so I'll have you do this, and then you can skedaddle. So we'll just do a nice, simple yes or no answer, and I'm going to give you some supporting documentation on the screen.
Well, I can start out like this. I mean, I know at the end of the day, everything you might ask me,
yeah,
the best answer I can give you that is all-encompassing is 2020. It's not over yet.
And I don't think it is either. I absolutely don't. But here it is. We'll just give it to you a nice quick one. It says, ask Juan. G. Westbury was nice enough to drop me a $5 bill and says, ask Juan if he honestly thinks a 30-06 shot Charlie Kirk. Juan would probably know ballistics and under exactly what that caliber would completely destroy. I don't understand the last part. I've got several 30-06s, and I had them.
I've probably run thousands of rounds to 30-06s, more than most people, because that's one of my favored rounds. It's, as far as I'm concerned, and you don't have to go by what I'm saying. There's plenty of other experts out there that are experts. In fact, we have the SHOT Show coming up next weekend here in Vegas. And Don Jr.'s coming out, and it's military manufacturers and like that only. But you could probably go screen all the special operators, and they'd say to a man, no prayer, not a chance. There is no world at that distance when that round would not would operate the way that it did in that environment. And I would say, even if you had a self-loaded round that was a very low velocity round, you got so much weight there that you get down below a certain point, you wouldn't have been able to be even accurate as that. There's just no prayer. It's, it didn't happen that way. Whatever happened, it wasn't that.
I agree, brother. All right, brother. I appreciate your time, and that was a good hour. I said, hey, we'll just do an hour, but we did a 2 and 40, and I know you got a meeting, so I do it. No, I do appreciate your time, brother. And like I said before, guys, we got the Jennifer Mack landing page, the Gumroad landing page, World According to Juan, and the link for the video making for a perfect day, the documentary that him and his lovely wife had made together. So once again, Juan, I appreciate you so much coming on, brother, and thank you for that. And and you and Jen have a great rest of your weekend. Now it's the weekend. Yay.
Yeah, well, and actually my chief of staff just showed up. We have stuff we have to get to here. And let me just add this one little teeny thing. Thanks to the audience, those that kind of powered through it, for letting me kind of talk about Mike Reagan and like that. And I didn't talk about it over the last several months while I knew other things were going on, or prior to the funeral like that. But I kind of wanted to get some of those things out there, out of my system. And so I'm glad I got a chance to do that with your show. And just prayers for the family. Colleen obviously was, just how do you even deal with that? I can't even think of the two of them without the other, and they will always be together. But it's it is a hard thing to be separated with so much ahead. She's fortunately got a great family, and the grandkids are just amazing. But you can feel for anybody in our community that might have a similar situation, and it's hard to take a loss like that. So prayers and thank yous for all of the sacrifices that people like that make, that have an impact on the country. That when this is all done, there's a number of players that will have to go back and go, would this have looked the way it does now without all of these little intricate pieces fitting together the way they did? Mike, we've had a number of great folks in this community, unfortunately, that aren't still here or have timed out or whatever. We'll have a lot to be thankful for out in the future, and Mike is one of them. So anyway.
Absolutely, brother, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. I know he was definitely a good friend of yours, a long-term friend, so I appreciate you, sharing that bit with us. So again, brother, enjoy that Las Vegas weather out there. Nice and dry. and like I said, give Jen our best, and you have yourself a great day, my man.
All right. Thanks, bro.
Thanks, brother. Have a good one.
Bye, folks.
Juanito07, always a fun time there. And yeah, you could tell he was definitely very close with Mike Reagan, Ronald Reagan's son, who I didn't even know was adopted. And that was pretty interesting insight there, that he always called him his son, not his adopted son. And I don't know if you guys caught what I was showing you a little bit earlier, but you can all go look in your pocketbooks if anybody's using cash still, but Federal Reserve notes, right? We all see these. Is legal tender for all debts, public and private. And so for some of those people who were asking me before, like, how do you access your Treasury Direct account and things like that? I'm going to give you a little hint as we kind of go through this. See these numbers right here? J0449508. Well, they are serial numbers for the bill, obviously. You got one here, you got one there, right? And then J. Well, what does J mean? Well, J is not, well, I can't even think of a city. Jefferson City, all right? It's not Jefferson City. It is, this one happens to be Kansas City, Missouri. So J is Kansas City, Missouri. A, I think, is like Atlanta, Georgia is B or something like that. But you get the idea. Every one of these letters is printed from a specific Federal Reserve. So J, as you'll see, is in here. It's always going to be the first letter of your serial number of the note, right? And so if you notice this one, the old ones don't have it. This is the United States note, or they turn into the Federal Reserve note. But also it has a serial number A0055, A005517, same stuff, right? So the hint I'm giving you about that is you need to find out which bank your air quotes Social Security account, and I'm using air quotes because I don't really know exactly what to call it. Some people call it Treasury Direct accounts, but I don't know, because they don't tell you, right? They tell you that they can basically pay off your debts and charge off your debts dollar for dollar because, oh, I don't know, back in the day, they told everybody you need to hand in all of your money, your silver and gold, anything of value, because, and then therefore what led to having no value out there. So House Joint Resolution 192 stated that they will discharge, let me record this one. House Joint Resolution 192 stated that they would discharge people's debts dollar for dollar or any basic monetization for the time. Dollar for dollar, because there is no legal tender after they took all the silver, gold, and anything of value back then. That was the remedy. Now, going into this, right? All your Federal Reserves are labeled as you see here. And why am I telling you, well, look at this and then look at the back of your Social Security card, right? Most people are going to have a red number on the back of your Social Security number, and it's going to start with a letter. That letter is a hint as to which Federal Reserve your account is in. Mine, for whatever reason, I don't know why, and I thought the name of the bank was pretty sly and slick as we're thinking about what we're thinking about here, is the bank that my account lies in is in Montgomery, Alabama, and I was born in Rhode Island, and it is absolutely at America's First Federal Credit Union. That's the name of the place, America's First Federal Credit Union. I wonder if they really were America's first Federal Credit Union, because that would explain a lot of things, right? And I've told you about this stuff in the past, guys, where I was like, well, if I try this and it's not legal, like I could, it could be like bank fraud or wire fraud or something like that. Like, I don't know. I don't want to dip my toes into something like that. Well, like it was meant to be on a platter. The next day I open up and I see the Federal Reserve put out a bulletin, and it says, oh, we understand people are trying to access what they're calling these Treasury Direct accounts, and just know that anybody found to be using these. And I'm like thinking, okay, yep, 10 years, 5 years, and $50,000 fine, 10 years in a federal institution, No. The thing literally said, may be responsible for late payments through your financial institution. I was like, wait, what? Might be responsible for late payments? Oh, hell yeah, I'm trying that. And so I've tried that, and I've done it, and I've showed you guys the results of how I've gotten the payment of these things over the years. Basically what happened is I was able to make payment on one of them, and then what happened is Amazon started turning off the, shutting off the sale at the point of purchase. So then I went through Telecheck, and they said, no, looks like Amazon got your money, and the first thing I ordered was a vape tank, and I got it the next day. It was the next day or the day after. It was like $38, and I got it. Amazon got their money, and that money came nowhere out of any bank account that I set up in Rhode Island. It was out of that bank in Montgomery, Alabama, and I have absolutely documented every step along the way that I did that. I'm verifying payment from Social Security account. Yes. Amazon or Amazon. You guys will hear. That's coming. Probably not.
Yeah, I think they said if I read correctly, it says there's no, because you can they maybe that's something they have some sort of a program that they notice people use bank accounts.
I've showed this a few times, guys, but here's the actual screenshot of Amazon saying, I've already checked your payments under your Amazon account, and I can confirm the charge for $42.98 was approved. And I'm telling you, I'm holding my hand to God. May he strike me dead as I speak this. The only information I entered into Amazon for that payment was out of a bank from Montgomery, Alabama, America's First Federal Credit Union. And not only that, but I had an audit done on the account through telecheck. So you go to write a check anywhere, some places might say, oh, hold on, we have to go verify it, and they call this number. Well, 9 times out of 10, that number they're calling is going to be telecheck. And they're like the #1 check verifier in the country, or they were as of the recording of those videos in 2018-19. Right? And so they're going to verify whether that information is in there. And they did an audit on my account, and I was fully expecting that audit to come back for them saying, yeah, we don't know what you're talking about. Account where? Like, I don't understand. So remember, when I did the audit on this account, I gave them my name, my full name, right? I gave them as the account number, the routing number from that bank in Montgomery, Alabama, their routing number. The bank account number was my social security number, okay? And then when they asked me for my personal information for the audit and they asked me for my social security number, I again gave them my social security number. They went so far as to ask the address I grew up on. They wanted to know my driver's license number, all sorts of things. And now, just so you guys are aware, whenever anybody goes out there to make any of these, they used to be called ACH payment or wire payments. If my address is, 508 First Street, and I write in all the information, I put 509. If my name is Mike and I put MIKF instead of E, any one piece, one single letter is out of place, that payment will not go through because it's not correct information. Now, with all that I just told you, that basically I gave them my social security number as the account number, their routing number for the bank in Alabama, and then my social security number as my social security number, fully expecting the letter to come back saying, yes, we don't know what you're talking about. This account does not exist. Like, what the hell's going on? Because the problem, as I mentioned prior, is Amazon started shutting off the sale at the point of purchase. And so when I did that, I went to telecheck. And so guess what the paper says when I get it back? Not, oh, well, this account doesn't exist, or yes, you're good to go. It simply said, after a thorough review of your account, we find that your account is now able to process online payments. So it's like, yeah, we checked your account. It's good. And, oh, by the way, good bonus, you can do online payments now. Great. Of course, I ran over to Amazon. I think I went and tried to put an Xbox or a PlayStation on there. I'm like, let me try this. Boom, payment goes through. And I'm like, shit, it worked again. All right, great. Well, about 5 minutes later, something told me to go check it out, and I went and checked, and the order was canceled. So at that point, they just stopped doing it. But guess what, guys? You can absolutely use these things to pay off other things. You can pay off debt. You can pay off credit card debt. You can pay your utility bills with it. Just look up TDA account and maybe a Harvey Dent, if there's any of his old videos around. I believe he's from California, African-American guy with a beard and sometimes glasses, if I'm not mistaken. He did a lot of videos on it in, the 2015 to 2018 timeframe. So look up TDA, Tom, Donna, and A as an Apple, TDA accounts, and Harvey Dent. You get more information. All right. Now that 7-minute ramble, I was going to record that for like a minute. Let me get out the door here, and I was only really planning. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me. That was very touching about him and Mike Reagan, and I know they had been friends for years. That me and Juan have been talking, that they had been friendly and what. Here to the foxhole. Clickety clickety. Thank you to Minnesota Girl for the cookie num num nums. And I'm telling you, Mats, if you guys are listening, we need some milk on the situation here. Cookies and milk. Hugh shook me all night long with the can. Says, God bless America, and I agree with that 100%. Satire for retards. Love the memes. Dropped 120 gold pills. Oh, stop that. Okay, they keep trying to get me to update. And then Pun Q Rocker 4Q with 196 gold pills. So thank you for that, both of you. And Hog Leg 71 with the cookie. Hog Leg, I like that. That's a new name for me, and I usually am pretty good remembering names. So if you've been in the chat for a while, don't take it personally, but I appreciate it. Hog Leg 71 with a cookie, followed up by another cookie from Hog Leg 71, and then the last one is another can from Hog Leg 71. So I appreciate that, guys. I'm releasing the scratchings over here. Bing, and they're released, and they'll come at you in a few seconds. And I'm heading over to D Live that I thought was stealing my. I thought they were stealing your donations, and to be honest with you guys, I still don't understand how it works because I'm going to show you guys on the screen. Right, like we did a show last night where people donated like 600. Ended up being like 660 diamonds, right? And look, I got 1.28 diamonds left, and when I gave them out last night, I only gave back like 6 diamonds. So I'm like, where the hell are they going? And so St. Cosmic Dildo here had dropped 10. Uzi Q had dropped another 10, and P Dancer with another 2. So I appreciate that, and that's 22 right there. So when I go to release the treasure map, it should be, you figure there should be 22 in the thing here. But there's only 6, and there's only 1 up there. So I don't know where my 600 went yesterday, if they already transfer them into coins or lemons or whatever the hell they did, but I don't know. But I can't even this. I can only distribute rewards here. I only have 1 diamond, and it makes you keep 0.5 for some stupid fee. So those are coming for you there, guys. So I appreciate that. Susie Q, we're waiting on a court decision. You're going to be waiting, if you're talking about the Tina Peters thing, we're waiting on that panel because they had some serious questions. And if I'm being honest, it really looks like she's going to get the nod on this one. Like she'll get out of there because those 3 judges were essentially attacking the prosecutor for I guess it would be our administration, or no, actually it's Colorado, those state charges, and she didn't have a friggin' answer. She was just sitting there like, somebody please say something, like somebody say something, because I got nothing. So yeah, she didn't look good at all. So guys, I'm gonna raid you over to my brother Rambo, and I can't believe it. I'm probably gonna raid you on both sides, on the Foxhole and over on Rumble, and should have done this about an hour and a half ago. So I do appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I'll be back with Hulkinator tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, as we have been for, geez, I don't even know, 6, 7, 8 years. I don't know how long it's been. It's been a minute. But me and Hulk will be back, as it will be Saturday, and it'll be at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Let me just getting set up for the raid, and so I will raid these guys. It looks like Rambo, Patrick, JF Anon, and Sapioplex are on there. And I'll raid you guys after the 2 outro videos. And remember, YouTube, you only get 1 because they asshole and they play games and will strike my channel. So I do appreciate each and every last one of you wonderful world patriots out there for tuning in. And again, thank you for the mods. Can't ever forget to thank you guys enough. And so, guys, until that next video, hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. Peace.
Hello, guys, something special is happening in here. That's right, it's brackets and jackets, bringing it back, but brackets and jackets, special Epstein Island edition. That's right, folks, Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein, the man with the island. Which is...
And thank you to Warrior Mima for the $5 Rumble rant. It says, thanks, Space Shot and Juan. It's been real. So sorry for cutting the video, but thank you for that.
It's funding lots of people. He's funding lots of people on the street to make sure his shit doesn't get out. That's right. They want the record sealed. And they're paying a lot of people. Epstein's paying a lot of people. Oh boy. For one, he's got a whole Mossad media matrix in America. And I would bet you anything that Alex Jones is one of them. Prove me wrong. That's right, Cappy's in the portal. Cappy's in the portal. Cappy's in the building with songs about Epstein. It's Breakfast Jacket's Epstein edition. Guys, I had some epiphanies today. I had some real big epiphanies about some guys. A big network of guys and spies and lies and liars. All right, think about this for a minute, okay? The guy in Portland, the scientist that just got busted for producing CP, that guy is 1 degree of separation away from Epstein. Epstein, the investor that lives in West Palm Beach, Florida. I know a guy who lives in West Palm Beach, Florida as well. Investor as well. Also involved as well. And all is not well with these guys. The Florida boys, the Glow boys, the Scott Israels of the world. You see, Epstein is Hillary Clinton. And Epstein is Haiti. And Epstein is a big network of media assets. By the way, did you know that Steve Bannon was going to that guy for money? Also, Epstein is Epstein Oprah. Epstein is Chris Tucker. You remember him. Epstein is also Kevin Spacey. Epstein is also Prince Andrew. Epstein is also... Who else is Epstein? Who else is Epstein? Tell me. You guys know? Who else is Epstein? Is Epstein Big Pharma? Is Epstein Bryan Singer? Is Epstein Naomi Campbell? Yep, all of the above. All of the above. Who is Epstein? Epstein is the keystone of a whole motherfucking matrix. And once you pull it out, it all falls down. Dersh was there too. That's right, we're dropping red pills every day. Dropping red pills in the best kind of way. This is brackets and jackets for the denizens of islands.